Hey everyone, welcome to the webinar. Hi. Sorry I'm late. I am so physically clumsy sometimes. I got myself a big glass of water so that I would have something to drink in case I started coughing or got a tickle in my throat or something. And as I sat it down, and then as I was plugging in my headset, I spilled the whole glass of water on my desk. So anyway, I got lots of towels to wipe it up. It's all good, just water. But yeah, it threw me back a little bit. Hey everybody, welcome. Happy New Year's Eve. Happy New Year's Eve. Out with 2018 and in with 2019. Here we go. Holy smoke-a-doodles. 2,466 people here from all over the world. Shauna, Happy New Year from California. Sandy from Palatine, Illinois. Love you. Thank you for all you do. Thank you, Sandy. Beautiful. Carol from Washington State. Lolly in Florida. Love your name, Lolly. Tony, what a blissful way to spend New Year's Eve. So sweet, Tony. Thank you. Amy from Boston. Loretta from the Oregon coast. Wendy from the UK. Pamela from Montana. My dad lives in Montana. Kim in Palm Springs, Barb in Canada, Kate from Calgary, Jenny from London, Marcy from Pensacola, Florida, Patty, Jennifer from Chicago. Oh, goodness, so many people here. Patty says, I start Brightline eating tomorrow. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. All right. Oh, wow. The chat thread is flowing in. Bonnie Esther from Massachusetts. Hey, Bonnie Esther. Tennis. Jay. Melanie. Oh, beautiful. Oh, love it. Love it, love it, love it. All right. So we're going to get started here. Jennifer from San Mateo, my old stomping ground. Karen, Iowa. Danielle. Brigitte from Germany. Yay. All right. We got some good stuff to cover today. I am looking forward. Let me go ahead and get my thing into slideshow mode. Show my slides. Here we go. I'm going to show you my slides. 3 keys to effective goal setting. And now, all right. So here's how this is going to go. I am going to now disable the chat thread after I say hi to Tasha from Australia. Hi. I wonder what time it is in Australia. It's probably early in the morning on New Year's Day. Happy New Year's. So what I'm going to do is, mute the chat thread. There's a reason I do this, because I know the scientific literature on multitasking. And I'm not actually one to be like, multitasking, tisk, 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 bad, bad, bad. I'm not the multitasking police. I am, however, aware of a couple lines of research. One is that when there's words flying through your field of vision, whether in the periphery or straight ahead, you cannot not read them. It's called the Stroop effect. You cannot not read them. You have to read words. It's like this weird sort of curse of learning how to read is once you know how to read, you are forced to read the words that are in your field of vision. It's this bizarre thing. So if the chat room is on, your eyes get pulled over there, you read the stuff, and then what happens is, you won't learn as much from the webinar, but you also won't enjoy it as much. And this is where I take issue, because I want us to all have fun together for the next little bit of time. I want us to enjoy this. I want to enjoy it, and I want you to enjoy it. So I'm going to set up the environment to maximize enjoyment. And that means we will get to chat after the webinar presentation is over. And I will stay on for Q&A. If you know me at all, you know I mean that. just warning you, I stay on to answer the questions. It's how I roll. So save your questions if you want to jot them down. That's cool. And we will go ahead and get started, y'all. So let me just make sure that my phone is set to not bother us, but also that I will notice, like if my team writes me and says, we can't see your slides, everything's black. That happens sometimes. And if I haven't noticed for an hour, that sucks for everybody. Okay, here we go. Ready? 3 keys to effective goal setting. Okay, so excited to be here with you. All right, outline of today's webinar. I'm going to introduce you to the problem of sustained behavior change. Like, how do we, get ourselves from point A to point B in terms of the people we want to be, the way we want to live, the habits we want to, embody, and in particular, this is a bright line eating webinar, right? So we're talking about losing weight, living happy, thin and free, eating in alignment with our values, like finally doing this thing, right? Like taking off all our excess weight, living in a right-sized body long-term, getting healthier, getting fitter, getting off those medications, waking up without joint pain, all that good stuff, right? It involves sustained behavior change. So we're going to look at that problem. Then I'm going to talk about effective goal setting because it's January 1st, and I know that most people set New Year's resolutions, and by far the most common New Year's resolution is to lose weight. So let's talk about effective goal setting, and I'm going to outline 3 keys of effective goal setting. And then I'm going to talk about goal setting in terms of the reboot, resume, reframe that we've been talking about here in Bright Line Eating Land for the last little while. I was going to say week, but it's probably been longer than a week. I've got 3 amazing videos out now that cover the reboot, resume, reframe, this masterclass series that I had so much fun creating, this video series. I hope you have been watching it. I hope you've been loving it. And then a 4th video that talks about the reboot, resume course. And people have been registering for this course at rates that are astronomical beyond my wildest expectations. So clearly this stuff is hitting a nerve. So I'm going to talk about goal setting, and I've given this goal setting lecture a lot of times. I started giving it in my positive psychology class at the college level when I started teaching positive psychology in 2010. I covered this material, and it's been evolving over the years. I've been adding to it and thinking about it more deeply. So this is sort of stuff that's really in my wheelhouse, but I've never presented it in terms of the reboot, resume, reframe before. So I'm excited about that. And then I'll talk a little bit about the courses that are available right now, Reboot, Resume, and the Bright Line Eating Bootcamp. That's going to be brief, so don't go hopping off the webinar just because you don't want to hear the offer for these courses. I'm going to go boom, 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 wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, through what's available in those courses really quick, and then we're going to get to an extended Q&A. So even if you know you're not interested in registering for those courses, or you've already registered or whatever, just sit tight through that, because there's going to be an extended, really juicy Q&A at the end where we'll open up the chat thread, and that's always like super fun and tends to go on for super long. So you don't want to miss out on that. Okay. So introduction to the problem. In a nutshell, the problem is that sustained behavior change is really, really hard. People launch out on new courses of action, turning over a new leaf, January 1st, and only 9% of people claim success with their New Year's resolutions. You ask them later in the year, how'd you do? And they're like, yeah, not so good. Did great through a little bit of January. And then, at some point, they say they, just reverted back to their old ways. 1% of the obese attain a normal BMI in 1 year. Almost all of those regain the weight. Weight loss is especially pernicious as a difficult problem. Now, in Bright Line Eating, someone who starts Bright Line Eating, particularly doing the boot camp, they're 55 times more likely to be in a right-sized body at the end of 1 year. So we're doing a lot better than the average. That's an understatement. A lot better than the average. If you want the numbers, if you want to see that data table, you want to Google likelihood of an obese person attaining a normal BMI within 1 year on Bright Line Eating. Likelihood of an obese person attaining a normal BMI within 1 year on Bright Line Eating. And you'll see the white paper that we published that has all the data, and you can take a look. So why? Why is it so hard to change? Well, because here's how it goes. We get motivated. We decide to launch our bold journey. January 1st, here we come. Victory will be ours. And then unravel, not quite sure, time warp, fuzzy, and then back to our old ways. So why is that exactly? Like, what's missing? Well, one thing is that no one warned us that all that motivation, that all that inspiration, and that the will to succeed this time finally would likely lead to our downfall. It wasn't going to help. Why is that? Because being inspired has nothing to do with sustained behavior change. And in fact, in some ways, being inspired can be counterproductive in a way that I'm about to explain to you. Being inspired is besides the point. Okay, counterproductive how? Well, because inspiration leads us to think big, to be ambitious, and therefore to bite off big chunks. And to focus on the goal. To focus on the goal, the outcome, right? The smart, measurable, well-articulated outcome. I will lose 60 pounds by November 1st of 2019. I will be in my right-sized body at goal weight by the family reunion in mid-July of 2019. That's the Bright Line Eating annual event that we do in San Diego that Bright Lifers get invited to. Yeah, but that's not the right framework for success. Those kinds of articulations of goals that are so common and so touted in the media and even in psychology, funny enough, the SMART framework, right? Specific, measurable, etc. Okay, so the right framework for success is articulated in my 3 keys to effective goal setting. That's why we're here, right? Obviously. Okay. Well, wait. Let's back up a second. Why set goals at all? I think it's important to ask that question. Like, why bother? And I bet there's a lot of people right here, right now, who are crushing it with Bright Line Eating, who are sitting back and saying, you know what? I'm not going to set a goal January 1st. I am living already the way I want to live my life. Happy, thin, and free. I don't need to lose weight. I'm, waking up and meditating. I have people in my life that I'm nurturing those relationships. And I might want to change some things, but I don't need to change anything just because it's January 1st, right? Like, why set a goal at all? One typically thinks one sets goals to achieve desired outcomes, to improve ourselves, our lives, the lives of those around us. Maybe a bunch of other reasons, fill in the blank, your important reasons here. But basically, it could all be boiled down to be happier, right? The idea is that we set goals for things that we think will make us happier in some way, or better off. I'm not like pigeonholing happier as a positive emotion per se, but just like better off, right? Greater well-being, greater life satisfaction, like better off, in that future state than in my current state in some way, right? Yeah. And in that way, we need to kind of ask, well, what does it mean to be better off? What is happiness? Can we become happier? And where does goal setting and then striving to achieve those goals fit into that picture? So I want to introduce you to a notion, and I just want to say, I'm going to give you precise percentages here, but these have been called into question, and it's not clear how we would even know. This research is based on stuff, but, take this a little loosely. But in 2005, Sonia Lyubomirsky and Sheldon and Shakade published this really seminal journal article that talked about the heritability of happiness. It turns out that well-being, happiness, positive affectivity, it's about as heritable as other strongly heritable traits like intelligence or IQ as measured by a standard IQ test, or extroversion, or, other, alcoholism, other strongly genetic things, okay? And what they found was that if you look at what makes up the variance in people's happiness levels, like their life satisfaction, their well-being. I'm using all those terms interchangeably, even though I know that there are subtle differences among them, but work with me here. Turns out that not much of our happiness or our well-being is based on our life circumstances. And by that, I mean our income, where we live, the car we drive, our budget for clothes, like all those life circumstances, they don't matter very much toward our happiness. Seriously, like, you think you'd be a lot happier if your salary doubled? Research shows you would not be. 40% of our happiness is what we do. Our actions and habits, our sustained volitional activities is what they call it. I put actions and habits. Their phrasing is sustained volitional activities. And 50% is our genetic set point. That's what their research showed. So it is true that some people are constitutionally happier than others. It's also true that, 40% is a lot of wiggle room. Imagine if you were 40% taller. You would suddenly be catapulted into the Guinness Book of World Records. Right? Imagine if you needed 40% less sleep every night. I mean, you could think, like, things that you're used to being a fixed quantity, all of a sudden you give 40% more. It's like, that's a lot, actually, right? So where do goals fit into this? Well, it is true, there's strong research on this, that all things being equal, people who set goals are way more likely to get from point A to point B than those who don't. Okay, so goals are a good way to improve our effectiveness in general at changing outcomes. So why? What's the mechanism of that? Well, one is focus. Goals create focus. So, for example, you could see this in a business or an organization. They'd be much more likely to allocate resources to a project if that project is on their strategic plan, right? If they had set the goal to achieve X, Y, Z, well, when it comes time, they're going to be more likely to give it a budget, right? And let it actually happen, right? So focus. If you have set the goal to lose weight in 2019, you're more likely to, focus on what it's going to take to do that, including maybe signing up for a program that would help you. You just are, if that's your goal. And another one is resilience, like staying on track, forcing yourself to get back on track once you deviate. When you have a certain endpoint in mind, some kind of future orientation toward a state you're trying to create, you know when you're off track and you turn that stumbling block into a stepping stone. Back, you got to get back on track because you've got this goal. Right? I have a friend who's trying to read, he had a goal to read all the Kurt Vonnegut books in 2018. And he has spent all day today reading the 14th and final Kurt Vonnegut book. He woke up today having read 13 out of 14 books, and he's reading a Kurt Vonnegut book today. Right? So that's a fair bit of resilience, right? Like just coming back to the point, coming back, coming back, coming back. Concerning all acts of creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. That the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. all sorts of things occur to help one that would not have otherwise occurred. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidents and meetings and material assistance which no man would have dreamed would come his way. I have learned a deep respect for one of Goethe's couplets. Whatever you can do or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius, magic, and power in it. So, what are the 3 keys to goal setting? The first key is to pick a worthwhile goal. Don't just go picking your goals willy-nilly. Let's talk about what a worthwhile goal is. It's one that is really likely to improve your life. There are certain actions, behaviors, habits that make us happier on average, that improve our life in a meaningful way. Let's talk a little bit about what that looks like, because I think it's worth thinking about this as an exercise in trying to raise our baseline level of happiness, to play with that 40% that's within our control. So, key number 1, picking a worthwhile goal. Are all goals equal? No. I mean, at the extreme, Hitler had a lot of goals, right? Some goals contribute more to happiness on an individual level, to flourishing and well-being on a global level, on a community level, on a family level. Let's talk about self-concordant goals. Self-concordant goals are those that are aligned with our personal interests and our values, aligned with our passions, what matters to us. And the reason this is important is because we often can get sidetracked by other people's standards and yardsticks. And since this is a Bright Line Eating webinar and we're a weight loss company, I want to ask you, do you want to lose weight? Or do you think other people want you to lose weight, or that one should be at a certain size, right? For me, it was really self-concordant. I had this knowing inside myself that I needed that weight off to be living my right life. I can't even explain why. I tried for years to not feel that way. Something about sort of the, I consider myself a bit of a feminist, and the sort of wrongness of feeling like I had to be thinner to be okay seemed, decidedly unfeminist of me. And I tried to love my, happiness at any size, health any size, fat acceptance, fat serenity, whatever, there were all kinds of terms that I heard other people using. I tried really, really hard to just love and accept myself as I was. Turned out through that journey, I realized I did love myself. I did. I just didn't love being fat. And so it was just a weird, I was like, I love myself just fine, especially my insides, but this body is not my body. And this way of eating is crazy. I am not aligned with the way I want to be treating my body. For me, the excess weight on my body was a manifestation of the ill health and the insanity of my eating patterns. I wanted to be eating in alignment with sort of a healthy, self-nourishing, steady pattern, and I wasn't. I was staying up late and finishing off a pint of ice cream in front of the TV. And a whole bag of chips, and then making myself a quesadilla. And it was like, this is not, it's 1 a.m. Why am I making quesadillas at 1 a.m. after eating a pint of ice cream? Not necessary, right? So for me, it wasn't so much that I carried a lot of judgment or internal fat shaming hatred. It was that for me, losing weight was a very self-concordant goal. Every time I felt sort of the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that pull towards self-actualization, the first thing on my list was I got to lose weight. And it wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from inside. I got to lose weight. it's my first step to being the person that I want to be in this world. It's the thing that's most in my way. And over the years, I just kind of kept coming back to that. Like it just happened that way. That's what was true for me. So for me, weight loss was a very self-concordant goal. I know that there are other people for whom it's the opposite. Letting go of the weight loss goal was their self-concordant path. And I have absolutely no judgment about that. As a matter of fact, I know that that's true for some people. And I respect it. And, I always say bright line eating is not for everybody, and I'm not in the convincing business. And so, pick a worthwhile goal, a self-concordant goal. There are, objective reasons why for a lot of people losing weight can be worthwhile in terms of, less joint pain, reduced risk for all kinds of diseases and early death and, all kinds of stuff like that. But pick a goal that's aligned with you. A freely chosen goal, the want tos versus the have tos. The other place to be careful when it comes to setting goals is just be careful that it's not, your spouse's desire for you, your daddy's desire for you, a keeping up with the Joneses kind of thing. Just ask yourself, toward what end? I want this thing, toward what end? Really. So my suggestion would be to keep in mind the acronym PERMA, which comes from Marty Seligman's book called Flourish, which is a really wonderful book in the positive psychology movement, all about what human flourishing looks like, what it's comprised of. And the acronym PERMA stands for, the P is positive emotions, E is engagement, R is relationships, M is meaning, and A is achievement. Those are the things that have solid research behind, the reality that they raise our well-being, our happiness, our well-being. They're conducive to human flourishing. So positive emotions, things that make us happier. Boy, you can think of positive emotions as the sort of hedonism component of happiness, like pleasure, right? I have the goal to someday own a hot tub. That would improve my positive emotions, right? Or, have more good sex with my spouse. That would be a positive emotion focused goal. Or go to the comedy club once a month would be a positive emotion focused goal. You get the idea, right? Engagement is all about flow, being sucked into an activity so intensely that time falls away. All self-consciousness or self-referential thinking is non-existent. You're completely absorbed in the activity. This is where sort of the magical alchemy of our mastery and our stretch and becoming better at something and our focus sort of meet at this brilliant point. And whether it's painting or creating music or playing basketball or cooking, it could be anything, but pick, I get into engagement right now. I'm in it. When I give lectures, for me, public speaking, even if there's no public, even if I'm just shooting a video by myself in my basement, that's one of my best ways to get into flow. Dinner party conversation does it for me too. Anyway, find something that is a hobby that's fully engaging, or work. Change your career so that in your job you get into flow, that full engagement. Are relationships, relatively self-explanatory. It's the number one predictor of happiness and well-being is the depth and appropriate numeracy of your connected personal relationships. You're introverted, you need fewer and deeper. You're extroverted, you need more numerous and not necessarily as deep to be satisfying. But everybody needs deep personal connection in order to be optimally happy, and almost everybody is chronically running under their ideal amount of connected human time spent connected with other people. Meaning is like, doing stuff that contributes to the kind of world you want to create. Be the change you wish to see in the world. Vocation, work is a really good place to increase meaning. Parenthood, grandparenthood is a great place. You can combine the meaning and the relationships category really brilliantly. And then when it comes to achievement, it's like, mastery, hobbies, climbing mountains, running marathons, developing new skills. There is some evidence that, especially for achievement-oriented people, achievement for its own sake can be conducive to happiness, like striving in and of itself. So focus on goals in these areas. Also focus on brain-changing goals, eating healthier, for example, exercising, meditating, a gratitude habit. These are things that quickly, radically change your brain for the better. But whatever you pick, make sure it's self-concordant. Okay, pick it, then cement it. I like to tell people to throw their knapsack over the wall. It's very helpful. If you've got a goal that's picked and you know it's a really self-concordant goal, you know it would really make your life happier, I want you to throw your knapsack over the wall. This could mean posting on Facebook your declaration that you will do it. Some kind of structural, let me just tell you where the throw your knapsack over the wall thing comes from. The idea is, you're on a multi-day hike, like let's say 10-day hike. All your provisions, your food, your sleeping bag, everything, your spare socks are in your backpack, your knapsack, okay? You've already been hiking for a couple days. You're in the middle of nowhere. It's rocky, it's dangerous, and all of a sudden there's a brick wall on your path. And you can't find a way around it, over it. You can't find a way. It's this big wall. No toeholds, no footholds, can't find a way over the wall. Okay, throw your knapsack over the wall. You will now find a way over that wall. I promise you will. You'll find a way. Okay, that's the idea, is like once you commit, that point of like no return, you're doing it now. Here's some examples historically. Roger Bannister announced to the world that he would run a mile in less than 4 minutes. He wasn't even that close. He was not one of the best runners in the world at the time. No one had ever run a mile in less than 4 minutes. And he announced to the world that he would do it, like press release in the papers announced, I will do this. And sure enough, he did. He was the first man to run a mile in less than 4 minutes. Thomas Edison announced to the world that in the year 1879, he would have a light bulb for the world. He demonstrated it to the world on December 31st of that year. And you've heard the stories of all the filaments he tried and etc., right? He had announced to the world that he would have a light bulb in that year, and he left no stone unturned. He'd thrown his knapsack over the wall, and he just kept at it. I was brand new as a psychology professor, and I got an itch, like a calling, really, to learn positive psychology. So in 2008, positive psychology was created as a subdiscipline of psychology, and I learned about it, and it just seemed, wait, did I just get that year wrong? Was it 1998? Okay, whatever. Ignore the stat that I just gave you. I'm not sure at all. Okay. But for me, the awareness came in 2009. I was learning about positive psychology. I was reading about positive psychology. It had not really existed or been an option when I'd gone to graduate school. If it had been, I would have studied it. I was so into personal growth and happiness and well-being, and suddenly there was a scientific discipline that studied it. And we did not have a course in positive psychology at my college. I wanted us to, and I wanted to teach it. Now, that was not my area of expertise. I was a neuroscientist. I was a cognitive scientist. But I didn't care, and I knew I was at a college where they would give me potentially the leeway to create a new course like that. even though it wasn't in my original area of expertise, but I would have to get training in it in advance. I had no training, but I wrote, and I was brand new. I wrote an email to my entire department. I would like to teach a course in positive psychology in the spring of 2010. Is that possible? Can I set a meeting with the chair to talk about it? To everybody, to the entire department. And word came back, yeah, set up that meeting, sure. And the fact that I had sent that email to my department, after that I got training at the University of Pennsylvania, which was the birthplace of positive psychology. Marty Seligman was a professor there. I got training in the subdiscipline of positive psychology, and I taught that course in the spring of 2010. I then taught it again as a special topics course, and then I put it through the curriculum approval process to be a permanent course at that college. I've now left that college, and someone else now teaches that course because it's a permanent fixture in that department. It's now on the schedule every semester. One of the most, other than Psych 101, one of the most popular courses they offer. So basically, necessity is the mother of invention. When you throw your knapsack over the wall, it's pretty powerful. Okay. The second key is to then build identity-based habits. That's what you do after you've picked your self-concordant goal. You build identity-based habits. Basically, and this general schematic comes from James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, although I've changed the second word. He doesn't call it actions, but I think he should. He calls it processes, but I call it actions. Another word would be systems, another word, I don't know, whatever, but I think it's actions, actually. So the idea here is that sustained change happens at these three levels. It happens at the level of outcomes, like an outcome would be losing 20 pounds. An action would be starting to eat breakfast every day, because you didn't used to eat breakfast, right? But you hear healthy people eat breakfast. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. You know the research that shows that people who eat more of their calories earlier in the day are way leaner than people who eat more of their calories later in the day. So you start eating breakfast. That's an action. Identity is, I'm a person who eats healthy. I'm a person who doesn't eat sugar and flour. I'm a person who does bright line eating. I don't eat that stuff anymore. That's an identity, okay? Or I eat breakfast every day is an identity. I'm a person who eats breakfast. I'm a breakfast eater. I eat breakfast. That's the kind of person I am. So it's important to keep in mind that you don't want to go this way, which is what everyone does. And even the picking of the self-concordant goal encourages you to then go that way, to start with the outcome. I want to lose 20 pounds in the first, quarter of 2019. I want to be in my right-sized body by the Bright Line Eating Family Reunion in July of 2019. I want to lose all my excess weight and get into my right-sized body with a goal weight of, whatever pounds in 2019. That's an outcome. Then you can think about, well, what actions am I going to take? Okay, I'm going to sign up for the Bright Line Eating Bootcamp. I'm going to sign up for Reboot Resume. And then you probably don't even think about the identity. That's the wrong way to go. These three things are always in play. You don't really get a say in that. Identity, actions, and outcomes are always in play. I want you instead to go this way, outward. Start with the identity. So you picked a goal, a self-concordant goal. Maybe it is, I want to be in a right-sized body in 2019. Okay, fine. Great. But the important question is, who do you have to become for that to happen? And maybe it's you have to become someone who really does bright line eating, who's not effing around this time. Maybe it's you got to learn a system that really works. What is this bright line eating thing here? Why are people so successful on this program, right? What are people raving about? Well, maybe you need to become someone who does bright line eating. If you're high on the susceptibility scale, which we're going to get to in a second, right? then you need to become someone who doesn't eat the foods you're addicted to. Just like if you want to quit smoking, you need to not smoke cigarettes anymore. You need to become a non-smoker. Then you need to think about once you get the identity solidified, you need to think about the actions. What actions am I going to take? What processes or systems would support real change in that area? What actions would someone who is that kind of person, what actions would they take, right? So an action might be signing up for a Bright Line Eating program and then doing whatever's asked, just following it. The actions might be, I'm going to start weighing my food. I'm going to stop eating sugar and flour. I'm going to start writing my food down the night before. I'm going to develop a meditation practice. I'm going to start making phone calls to people who do Bright Line Eating. I'm going to start using a nightly checklist to track and monitor my habits. Now notice what I said up here. Oh, I didn't say it there. I put it afterwards. Good. Okay. Here I want to say one more thing about this. Okay. I want you to build identity-based habits. Here, ready? Here we go. Focus on the identity first and the action second, and ignore the outcome. I want you to ignore the outcome. Outcomes are outcroppings. They're results. They're not something you have control over. You have control over your behavior. And you can pick an identity that you want to be the driver of your behavior, but you cannot control how fast your body loses weight or what it does. You can control the food that you put in your mouth. You can start putting it on a digital food scale. You cannot control the outcome. I want you to actually ignore the outcome. And if you just defined a goal based on losing X amount of weight by X time, I want you to change that goal. A better goal would be, I will sign up for the Bright Line Eating Bootcamp and I will focus on it and do what it tells me to do. I will answer every research questionnaire. I will be active in the Facebook group. I will be there at the end of the program, and I will become a Bright Lifer. Those are actions that will lead to the outcomes that you want. I don't want you to have as a goal losing X amount of pounds by X date, because you have no control over that. Sort of like, when I ran my first marathon, my only marathon, what am I talking about? When I ran the marathon that I ran, which was way back in 2001, I read a book called The Non-Runner's Marathon Trainer. And it said, if this is your first marathon, which it probably is because you're a non-runner, don't you dare set a time goal for your marathon. I get that lots of people do. I want to run a marathon in less than 4 hours is a very, very common time goal. Don't you dare do that, they said. Because how dumb would it be? How wrong would it be for you to be crossing the finish line on your first marathon, something almost nobody ever does, and feel like a failure? You must not create that universe. There's no universe in which that's acceptable. You can set a time goal for your second marathon. For your first marathon, finishing is the goal, full stop. So, how lame would it be if you completed the Bright Line Eating Bootcamp, followed it to a T, kept your lines squeaky clean bright, and were 2 pounds away from the pound goal that you'd set by whatever date, and felt like only like a semi-success, like not really a success. You'd done absolutely everything you could have done toward your most ideal outcome. And not only that, you're looking great, you're feeling great. It's just, and you didn't set your weight goal. I mean, you didn't achieve your weight goal, right? You must not create a world. Like, you get to define the game. Goals are like your own. So create goals that serve you, right? Okay. The third key is that you have to conceive of your goal in the right way. Misunderstanding goals leads to untold happiness and disillusionment. So how do we conceive of our goals in a way that benefits us? So keep in mind the following. The goal is the means. It's not the end. Meaning, achieving a goal won't make you happier. That's not its proper role and function. We think achieving our goals will make us happier, but it doesn't. Some of these people achieved a lot of goals, probably all the goals they ever had. In fact, there is no amount of goal achievement that will make you or anyone lastingly happier. There just isn't. Success, fame, being thin and lean, it does not lead to happiness. So once you have a goal, keep in mind that focusing on it will not help you. That is not the point. In fact, it will hinder your progress. The reason it'll hinder your progress is because if it's a big goal, there's nothing you can do this second that will bring it to fruition. You are powerless, ultimately, really, to achieve that big goal. All you have power over is the taking of baby steps today. Baby steps. In the context of a really big goal, baby steps seem not to matter. And this is why having a big goal and then focusing on it is such a bad idea. It's why it derails us, because it allows us to lie to ourselves and procrastinate today on taking any action toward it, because it just sort of seems like in that perspective of the shadow of the huge goal, it just seems like, how does this tiny little action make any difference at all? You let yourself off the hook and you don't have to take that little action. You just go to bed instead. But in reality, those baby steps are all that matters. Baby steps are the thing. Baby steps are all that matter because they're all you can control. They build on each other. And they turn into your habits, which are absolutely the point. So if you go along expecting that reaching your goals will make you happier, the result of that is that you're likely to experience disillusionment and unhappiness. Goals only increase well-being when they're properly understood. It's not reaching the goal that makes you happier. It turns out, the good news is, it's actually having the goal that makes you happier. It's having the goal, which means you're happier the moment you set it. You're like, ooh, this sounds like fun. Maybe I'll strive for this. Boom, you're happier right that moment. That's it, folks. That's the purpose. And when you have that goal, it's liberating, because you know when you're on track. You're like, oh, okay, I'll take this little step. That'll help me get there. Now you can relax and enjoy the journey more. Good goals add meaning to life. They launch us off on doing things that are actually going to improve our day. Good goals make it easier to make choices, because then we can allocate resources appropriately and say no thank you to other things that aren't going to help us get, to where we want to go. Without goals, life is full of ambivalence and uncertainty. It's kind of like, well, I don't know, all options seem kind of equally good because I don't really know where I'm going. But keep in mind, the goal is the means, not the end. It improves the process of traveling. That's all. It improves the process of traveling. It makes today better by a bit. So the end is happiness right now today, greater enjoyment and fulfillment in the present moment. That's what we get out of a good goal. When you know that, you're golden. And as a matter of fact, once you're getting pretty close to achieving a goal and the shine starts to fade, you don't expect to be any happier for having achieved the goal. As a matter of fact, you know the truth. You're less happy now because your goal is running out. So you need to go set a new one. So it is okay to have a goal. I just want to be clear. It's fine. If you've set New Year's resolutions, fine. It's totally okay to have a goal. But keep in mind, there's a right and a wrong way to orient toward your goals. The wrong way is to think that reaching your goals will make you happier. It won't. The right way is to recognize that having the goal makes you happier. So yay, if you've set a New Year's resolution, that improves your day-to-day. Congratulations, you. The way this works is that dopamine is a pathway for reward and motivation. We get a hit every time we complete a small action that moves us toward our goal. Dopamine gets linked in to behaviors that help us get toward our goals. Even simply anticipating achieving a goal will do it. But funny enough, there is no big spike in dopamine when we actually reach our goal. All that happens is we've lost the goal now, so we don't get those small bumps in dopamine anymore. We got to go find a new goal. Okay. So those are the 3 keys. Now I want to talk about how all this fits into the reboot, resume, reframe. Okay. So just a quick refresher on the reboot, resume concepts. Okay. In video 1 of the masterclass series on reboot, resume, I talked about how when it comes to living happy, thin, and free for a lifetime, there are 3 things that are as essential as air. AIR, automaticity, identity, and resume. That's the AIR, the AIR of living happy, thin, and free. Now notice that this is true for those of us like me who used to be obese or overweight and are living in a right-sized body now. I was obese in my 20s. I'm 44 now. I've been in a right-sized body for 15 years, eating the way that I teach people to eat in Bright Line Eating. I do it. The automaticity, identity, resume. But people who are constitutionally thin always have been. They're doing it too. They have automaticity around eating healthy foods and, at regular intervals. They have the identity of somebody who doesn't, gorge themselves on excess food, who doesn't eat a lot of junk food, who, eats well to maintain their weight. And when they get a little off track with that, they get right back on track. Automaticity, identity, resume. Now, for those of us who are not constitutionally thin, we need to break down that resume a little bit. In order to resume, I'm teaching people now to use the free again system, FAS, the free again system. You focus on food, actions, and support, FAS. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this automaticity in relation to actions around our food, actions around the habits that support healthy living so that we can, tolerate not shoving all that extra food in our mouth, actions around support, okay? There are a lot of things we do in Bright Line Eating that make up a solid Bright Line day. And ideally, we work toward them becoming automatic. So this right here is a schematic of what that looks like. This is why the typical way of setting New Year's resolutions sets people up for failure when it comes to weight loss. They launch out on ambitious food programs, combine it with an ambitious exercise program, do it all at once. That's a recipe for failure. The cognitive load on that, I talk a lot about how you don't want to start exercising. Even if you've been exercising, you really want to lay off. You really want to put on your bunny slippers if your focus is to lose weight. So if it's January 1st, you should be not hitting the gym. You should be focusing on going grocery shopping, getting all the food you need in the fridge, having your food written down before the day starts, exactly what you're going to eat, and then kind of resting for the rest of the day. That's what you should be doing. And the reason is that there's a cognitive load to each new behavior that we try to institute. Think about a 6-year-old kid learning to brush their teeth morning and night. It's like, I've got 3 girls, 3 kids, twins who are 10 and the little one's 7. And I'll tell you, a few years ago, our house was like, it's still occasionally with one of them, our house was like, a battleground of teeth brushing. Have you brushed your teeth yet? Oh, let's brush your teeth. Do you need help? Come on. Like it was like so much coaxing. With 2 out of our 3 kids, we're out of the woods of like teeth brushing reminders. It took so long for that to become automatic. There is a load involved with each new behavior, okay? After some repetitions of that new behavior, it becomes more and more and more automatic, which means that the mental resources needed to execute that behavior just go down. Most of us get teeth brushing for free. Pretty much everybody gets getting dressed before you leave the house for free. Nobody ever, walks out of the house naked and says, yeah, I just didn't have time to get dressed this morning. God, what a morning. It's just kind of crazy. Hectic. Yeah, no pants today. Don't have time for that. Nobody does that, right? Getting dressed is a non-negotiable, and it just happens. Nobody ever sort of slips up on that one just because they're busy, right? The cognitive load of getting dressed before leaving the house is down to almost nothing with repetition, okay? So at that point, we can add another behavior. Cognitive load goes up, but we repeat that other behavior and until that one gets automatic. Now, so this could be like writing down your food the night before. Making a bright line eating phone call every day, adding a morning meditation practice, 10 minutes every morning, writing a nightly checklist, like tracking your habits to see how you're doing, writing in a journal every night, a gratitude journal, a 5-year journal, adding a morning reading, an evening reading, some kind of inspirational, soul food, brain food. These are the types of behaviors that we do, posting, so forth, right? So yeah, you can add these fairly quickly, especially if you're carving out time and space and you're just putting on your bunny slippers, right? You're running around like a mad person and trying to exercise too, like not so likely. It's not going to go so well. You got to allow time. So notice that the cognitive load, if you just try to jump up and do everything at once, the cognitive load would be this. We're going to put this on top of that, right? It's going to be like, we don't get the downslope here, right? You got to put this up from here. And then the cognitive load is like 2 or 3 times higher than this whole graph, more than anybody has. So if you don't allow some time, this is why baby steps are really important. And this is why sort of, in February, gyms are no more crowded than they are in December. They're packed in the first week or 2 of January. This effect is really serious. I should have drawn a graph of like what these lines look like if you don't allow any time for any automaticity to build. It would take so much. You would not have the effort, the bandwidth. You just wouldn't have the bandwidth to force it all in, okay? So that's where automaticity fits in. Automaticity makes taking baby steps really important. So here's what that looks like. If you want to do bright line eating, I want you to allow time, especially like if you're in Reboot Resume. I want you to allow time to layer things in again, like get the important things really solid. If I had to tell you what to focus on, I would say 2 things. Writing down your food the night before and eating only and exactly that, and making bright line eating phone calls. Those are your highest yield activities. Do those until they're automatic. And you'll notice if you're in Reboot Resume, I'm having you do a phone call challenge right now, right? If we talk about the free again system, food, actions, and support, I want to talk for a second about the susceptibility scale. Because if your goal is to live in a right-sized body and somehow you've articulated some kind of New Year's goal around that, what I want to say is it really matters how high you are on the susceptibility scale. It really, really matters, okay? Because if you're super high on the susceptibility scale, it means you're going to have to focus on adopting a system that's strong enough that you can keep the cycle's way above the danger and destruction zone. The cost of you sliding into the danger and destruction zone is just too high. And if you're really high on the susceptibility scale, the identity is more important. The identity of someone who does bright line eating and doesn't deviate, doesn't make exceptions. That interacts with the S in support, because the easiest way to do that is to surround yourself with people who do bright line eating. You got to shift this up. Way, 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 way up if you're high on the susceptibility scale. So these are the three aspects of the resume reframe. You shift the curve up, you soften off the edges, and you resume quickly so that you notice as you're sliding down off track. People have been asking me a lot lately, if your food is on track, if you're not breaking your bright lines, if you're not eating junk food, you're not eating outside of mealtime, you're actually eating what you've committed to eat, then what does this cycle mean? Why is it going up and down? Isn't it just a straight flat line? And I say, well, life is never a straight flat line. It could be a downslope because your meditation practice has gotten thrown off, or because you're not as connected to your bright line eating support for a while, or because you've gone a couple of days without writing down your food. You're still pulling a bright line meal out of the fridge. You're just not writing down your food. That's what the downslope could look like. Or it could look like something in the food domain. You're relying on bigger fruit. Psychologically speaking, you just feel like the apple has to be huge to be a good apple. You're using excessive condiments. You're drinking 8 or 12 or 75 million cups of herbal tea to get through the day. Nothing wrong with that. It's not a break in your bright lines. It just signals a downslope, right? Like, it just means that you're in a lapse phase. When you pull all that together, you're back in a resume phase. You're like getting it back together, right? If you're lower on the susceptibility scale, you can tolerate these downslopes having some element of being a little off track with your food. If you're a 3 or a 4 on the susceptibility scale, that's okay for you. The consequences are not severe enough to probably make it worth it for you to do what it would take to build a program strong enough to never deviate from your food. I want you to know that if you're high on the susceptibility scale and you have not been willing thus far, willing or able, to build a bright line eating program strong enough to not ever deviate from your food plan, I get it. It does take a lot to do that. But if you're in Reboot Resume, if you're thinking about it, if you've been paying attention to the Reboot Resume reframe, it might be because you finally come around to realizing it's just not worth it to do it any other way. Because the hit to my quality of life is so strong. Because I'm high on the susceptibility scale. I just don't get away with it. I thought I would. I thought I could cut corners and be successful enough anyway. But I can't. It shows up in ways that aren't acceptable to me. It shows up on the scale. It shows up with increased obsession and perseveration about how I feel off track. It shows up with decreased quality of life. For those of us who are high on the susceptibility scale, we just don't feel right if we're off our plan. We don't feel good in our skin. We don't feel aligned. Everything suffers. I just want you to know that I get what a bummer that is. Like, it's not fair. Other people get to eat those foods occasionally with impunity, and we don't. It sucks. And it's true. And what's true is true. You know, if it's true, then it's true. So if you're in that place where you're like, gosh darn it, I thought I could cut corners and be okay, but I can't. Then I want to tell you about the Reboot Resume program. I'm going to talk about that for a little bit, and then we're going to do Q&A, okay? So in the Reboot Resume program, which is available now, by the way, and only until January 3rd, there is the Getting Started module, which is already in there. It's already available. People are telling me they love it. And an identity and inquiry inventory also in there right now for you to really take a look and put pen to paper and say, okay, what have I done? What has worked? What has not worked? It's shining the light and seeing what you see for you. Reboot Resume is different than any other Bright Line Eating program in that it calls you to be accountable for you. You have enough experience now with Bright Line Eating where you know your truth, and I ask you to stand in it. And in order to do that, you need to take an inventory of the data that you've collected so far on your Bright Line Eating journey. And then I teach you the free again system, which is cycles of deepening actions and accountability around food action support. Getting your food right, doing the actions that support this lifestyle, and dialing in a support system to make it all hum. The free again system, by the way, and the Piercing the Perfectionist Bubble system come with a daily video for 66 days. If you've done the 14-day challenge, you know what it's like to wake up with a video from me. 66 days. Why 66 days? Because research shows, published scientific research shows that that's on average how long it takes for something to feel automatic. 66 days. The 66 days will start after the kickoff call. We're having an introductory kickoff call on January 6th, and the daily videos will start the next morning, Monday, January 7th. There'll be modules on the science of how food, the way we eat in Bright Line Eating, changes your brain, the science of action, and the science of support. And there'll be a measure and monitor module to find a way of tracking your Bright Line Eating journey that works best for you. Tracking is very important. If the nightly checklist isn't your bag, there's going to be other options, but I want you to experiment a little bit and find a way of tracking that really works for you. You will also receive our super support package, private online connection and conversation community. That's Resume House. It's happening now. And can I just say, my husband is in there. He joined Reboot Resume, unbeknownst to me, and he started posting in there, and he's such a hit. Oh my God, he's so funny. He went and bought his own digital food scale, which I'm just saying I think is a little ridiculous because we have like 8 of those in the house. And he went and bought another one, but his is white. All of the other ones are black or silver, all of my scales. He's like, don't touch my scale. It's the white one. I'm like, okay, sweetie. And he's like, yesterday morning, he took a little photo bomb, a little picture of like us in the kitchen with our bowls, like measuring out our oats, like my scale and my bowl and my oats in there, and his scale and his bowl and his oats. And he took a little, I didn't know he was doing it. He took a little picture, a little selfie, and he's like, you know, dueling oatmeal scales at the Thompson house. And he threw it up there in Resume House. And then later that day, he posted, I ate Susan's vegetables. I didn't know. I didn't know. I ate for lunch the vegetables that she had committed for her meal. Sorry, Susan. Anyway, so he's posting all this stuff. It's hilarious. But more than just funny stuff happens in there. If you want to see my husband being hilarious, he's quite a hit right now in Resume House. But it's a really, really, really supportive community. Truly, truly beautiful. And of course, we also have special interest groups. Those are Bright Lifers things, but we make the ones for men, bariatric surgery, and eating disorders available to people in Reboot Resume, because we feel like those access to those groups are really going to help people who have those particular demographics or whatever to be successful. There's weekly customized care coaching calls, and a phone list, a Reboot Resume phone and buddy list. And some really cool bonuses. A food prep time saver system. If you want to know the methods of prepping food that are best if you're busy, best if you're stressed, or, that are fine if you're like not so busy and not so stressed, like retired and whatever. 4 resume roadmaps for getting you back on track, no matter what kind of, falling off the wagon you've experienced. A tiny one, a chronic, like, oh my gosh, I'm in the ditch, or like like a periodic type thing. So I've 4 different roadmaps for getting back on track from different types of breaks. A mindfulness meditation for beginners course by Monique Rhodes, in case you've never really learned to meditate and you want to actually do it this time. We've got a meditation course for you. You just give us 10 minutes, and we'll get you meditating regularly. And then a bonus called My Custom Successful Support System. So different people have different preferences and needs when it comes to getting support on their food journey. And this is a process of experimentation that will help you figure out what works best for you. And a masterclass on identifying your isolator. The Identify Your Isolator masterclass. The isolator is the part of us that keeps us from getting the support we need. It keeps us isolated. The reason it does that is to keep us safe from judgment and criticism. It's trying to protect us. It's trying to do right by us. Unfortunately, though, a lot of us who are higher on the susceptibility scale and lower on the susceptibility scale don't ever achieve the results that we want because we let our isolator talk us out of reaching out for the support that would allow us to be successful. So this masterclass helps you identify what's genuine, needful, beneficial alone time to recharge our batteries versus isolation. And then finally, the Crush Cravings course. So if you struggle with cravings, this is the course that's going to help you overcome cravings. Now, Reboot Resume is for people who are experienced with bright line eating. It's a more advanced course. If you're new to bright line eating or relatively new, like if you've just done the 14-day challenge recently, or if you've never done any bright line eating at all and you're new, then the course for you is the Bright Line Eating Bootcamp. And before I talk about that, I just need to go, and I just realized I was supposed to do this before, but I don't always do everything at the right time. Here we go. I'm supposed to let you actually register for the course, yo. Okay, ready to make your choice, secure your spot now. If you want to get happy, thin, and free, clicking that button, secure your spot now, will take you to a description of each of the courses, the Bright Line Eating Bootcamp and Reboot Resume, and then you can register for the one that you like. The Bright Line Eating Bootcamp is the online program that I created several years ago that has just turned the world of weight loss on its head. Like, we're scientifically demonstrating results that have never been seen in the weight loss world. And if you've been paying attention on the Facebook Lives and all the different things that we've been doing lately, you have seen some of those results. Now, because I know that people are excited about Reboot Resume and feeling some fear of missing out around, saying, oh, I want to do Reboot Resume. But the Bright Line Eating Bootcamp is the place for you if you're brand new. And what I'm doing to ease your psyche around that a little bit is I'm taking the Reboot Resume stuff and I'm pimping it out for you. Basically, I'm giving you a bonus that gives you all the Reboot Resume materials in a package that's tailor-made for you at the beginning of your Bright Line Eating journey. So this special bonus package that's only available right now through January 3rd includes the Reboot Resume bonus module, which is a module for people who are starting out. Like, how does the Reboot Resume framework apply to you as you start out and build your foundation strong and true with the Bright Line Eating Bootcamp? There is a way to go through the bootcamp with the Reboot Resume reframe in mind in a way that will inoculate you against future crashes and burns. And I will teach that to you in this module. It's going to be a very action-based Do these things and it will set you up to succeed forever. Now, I can't promise, obviously, 100% of people will be 100% successful forever, but it is an action roadmap that will inoculate you against future crashes and burns using the reboot, resume, reframe. It will also, if you end up being a crystal vaser and never breaking your bright lines, meaning a crystal vaser is a term only experienced people would understand. So let me say that differently. If you end up never breaking your bright lines, one of the downsides of that trajectory, it's great for all kinds of reasons. You lose your excess weight really fast and you feel really free, but it can result in a lot of fear. Fear of if you take one step off the path that you'll lose it forever. And this will help you live happy, thin, and free without that fear. I'm going to do a couple of group coaching calls myself. I don't do bootcamp coaching calls anymore, but I will do a couple with you for you, which is awesome. Those are always really fun. And then at the end, toward the end of your bootcamp, I'm going to present to you a webinar, kind of like this one, on the 10 key lessons from seasoned resumers. So I'm going to take the reboot, resume folks, and I'm going to say, all right, what do you wish you'd known when you were ending your first boot camp? Like, seriously, what has been the one lesson that has been the most painful for you to learn after the fact? And if you could go back in time and whisper it in your ear when you were coming out of your first boot camp, you would be so, so, so grateful. All right. I'm going to put those 10 key lessons from seasoned resumers and put them into a webinar and give you the keys to the kingdom as your boot camp is wrapping up. So your investment for either of these courses, they're the same investment, so that's really easy, is $497. There is a payment option. You can click on the blue button over here to the right that says secure your spot now. And if you're a Bright Lifer, Reboot Resume is $397. Now, if you're a Bright Lifer, don't click on the blue button. You need to go to the Bright Lifers website, your Bright Lifers website, and there is a banner running across the top of your Bright Lifers website to register for Reboot Resume from there. Okay? And my guarantee to you is that there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. So give Reboot Resume a try. And if it doesn't work for you for any reason at all, this is true of the bootcamp as well, you can have 100% of your money back. 100%. No harm, no foul. No arduous process. Just boom, you get a refund. Now, I want you to notice, if you choose to sign up for the course, that you become happier the moment you start the journey. It's not when you arrive at the destination. Really happy, thin, and free is a state of mind. You get it right away as soon as you take the first steps down this path. All right, my loves, we are going to go to question and answer, which means I have to unmute the chat thread. So give me a second to figure that out. And let's see here. Go ahead and think of your questions. And as soon as there's a box, you can type them into the box. All right, the chat should be enabled. And I'm going to turn back on my webcam. Turn the screen share off. My hair got crazy. All right. My hair is still crazy. Curly, curly. Okay. All right. I have a request from the person on my team who handles billing. When you click to order, like you actually click the button and say, process my order, only click the button once. It takes her 20 minutes to process one refund. And if you click the button twice, you've just ordered twice. A woman yesterday clicked the button 9 times. And Simone had to process 8 refunds at 20 minutes a pop. I get how eager you are to sign up for the course. I love it. Please only click the button once and then just wait. Your computer might be slow. It might take a little while. Just wait. Just wait. Okay? Just wait. Be patient. It's buying it. You're registering. Just click the button once. All right. All right. Debbie says, is this a plant-based eating program? It can be. So I read the China study in 2012 and started doing it plant-based. It's super easy to be plant-based. It's not required, but it is. I make it super easy by having a separate table for, if you want to do it plant-based. Boom, 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 boom. Super easy. Margaret says, if it takes 66 days to build automaticity, why isn't the boot camp 66 days? It's pretty darn close. They're about the same length if you factor it all in, the time to get through the getting started checklist, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. As a matter of fact, the little known fact, but we give a couple extra weeks in the boot camp. So it's actually a 10-week program. 10 times 7 is 70 plus the getting started checklist. It probably takes most people about 75, 78 days to get through the boot camp. So yeah, they're both designed to be about the same amount of time. Okay, Patty says, so how would you rephrase the goal of losing weight on the Bright Line eating system? That is the question. That is the question. And before I answer that, Patty, I just need to remind people of a couple things. So first of all, if you're typing a question into the box, can you mark it as a question, please? Because people sometimes just type feedback, thank you, I liked that, whatever. But if it is a question, please mark it as a question. So if you hover your little mouse, you should be able to mark it as a question. Just flag it. That'll help my team. They're taking the questions and copying and pasting them into a document so I can answer. And then the other thing is, there are so many people on this webinar that Webinar Jam won't let everybody into the chat thread to type. So if you're finding that you can't type into the chat thread, what you need to do is see at the top of the chat thread, there's that yellow sticky note that says, if you are unable to access the chat room, you can submit your question here. And then there's a link, ble.life/OMHA. Click on that, and then you can submit your question over there. So we've just created a workaround so that everybody can participate. When so many people register, Webinar Jam just doesn't allow that many people to participate. So, okay. Back to your amazing question, Patty. How would you rephrase the goal of losing weight on the Bright Line eating system? That is a great question. I would phrase it as, I am going to become someone who does Bright Line eating and be absolutely unstoppable. Now, I get that that is not a measurable goal, but you could make it measurable by measuring it. So what you could say is, I am going to sign up for the Bright Line Eating Bootcamp and then Bright Lifers and any other courses after that that feel indicated. And every single week, at the end of the week, Sunday night, I'm going to ask myself, on a scale from 1 to 5, how much effort did I put into my Bright Line Eating course this week? On a scale from 1 to 5. And I commit that I'm going to get 4s and 5s all year long. That I'm never going to lapse in terms of actually showing up and participating and doing what these courses are asking me to do. You do that, your weight loss will happen. Like, you will be in a right-sized body, ASAP. Like, it just will happen. That's what it takes to get happy, thin, and free, because Bright Line Eating is a proven system. We are currently the most successful weight loss program on planet Earth by a lot, like 55 times more likely to get you into a right-sized body if you're currently obese in 1 year. Go check out our data on that. Likelihood of an obese person achieving a normal weight within 1 year on Bright Line Eating. So you just take my hand and the hand of all the people who are doing this right now, and you do what we do, and you will get what's on offer here. But that would be one way that would be an identity-based, like, I'm going to be someone who does this every week, week in and week out in 2019. I'm going to show up for my Bright Line Eating program. Maybe not perfectly, but a 4 or a 5. If 1 week you get a 3, so be it. Okay. Approximately how long are the daily videos? I want to get up that much earlier so I can do it first thing before work. Give me an extra 15 minutes of your day. You'll be good. They vary. I heard you say you discourage juicing and green smoothies. Why? Wants to know Ellen. Several reasons. First of all, my job in life is to protect people who are higher on the susceptibility scale. And what happens is it turns out that green smoothies and juicing don't allow the brain to heal. The dopamine downregulation. What happens is the fructose and glucose in the vegetables and fruits and food that you put into the juicing machine, they rush into the bloodstream super fast because they don't have the blunting from all of the fiber lattice network and all that stuff. Even if you let the fiber pulp in, it's not the same as eating the whole food, right? You have, by blending it all up, you have substantially, exponentially increased the surface area that each molecule is exposed to, the surface area to allow digestive enzymes to have a fast impact. So fructose and glucose rush into the bloodstream. You get a glucose response, you get an insulin response, and you get a dopamine response in the nucleus accumbens, which doesn't allow the dopamine receptors to heal. You keep cravings on board. Second problem is deeper in the brain, in the hippocampus. You've got a process called neurogenesis, which is the creation of new brain cells, new neurons. It's the only place you really get them in the brain, is this hippocampus. The creation of those new neurons is the primary driver of your serotonin creation system, which is for mood, and also your memory system. Now, it's not the serotonin, it's the neurogenesis. Protects your memory, protects your cognitive functioning, protects against Alzheimer's. And when you blend and juice your food, neurogenesis goes down. When you chew your food, neurogenesis goes up. And so you don't want to be damaging your brain by blending your food. Third reason, research shows that swallowing your calories as opposed to chewing them doesn't allow you to feel full from that same amount of food. Like, you eat the food, like you get the calories, but it doesn't lead to satiety. You got a weight problem? That's a problem. So lots of reasons not to blend your food. Okay. Laurel wants to know if this will be posted somewhere for a few days. I didn't mean to hit return. My internet went out a couple times during the presentation. I missed about a quarter of it. I do believe, Laurel, that you will be getting a link to the replay just by email, like Webinar Jam will send out, yay, there was a webinar and here's the link. So yeah. Hi, this is Pamela from Montana. Is this the boot camp? Sorry. Is the boot camp and the 14-day challenge the same thing? And if so, if I start tomorrow, January 1st, am I on my own time frame? Pamela, I don't know what you mean by am I on my own time frame, but I think maybe I do. So let me answer your question as best I can. The boot camp and the 14-day challenge are not at all the same thing. The 14-day challenge is just a little toe dip in the water. It's not the full Bright Line Eating program. It's just a very cursory, preliminary. Some people just need to try something before, like they just will not sign up for a $497 program, even if there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. They're not going to do that. So the 14-day challenge just allows them to tip their toe in the water and just see if it feels right to them. And then they can sign up for the boot camp after that. The 14-day challenge has no support, no coaching, no Facebook group, and it's not the full program. The boot camp is the full program with coaching, with a Facebook group, with support, with bonuses, with, way more in depth than the book, way more. It's the full program, and it's the program that has created the track record of success that you hear me bragging about, and that has been presented, at 3 scientific conferences and published in 1 scientific peer-reviewed journal so far. More scientific articles in preparation. So if you sign up now, Pamela, for the camp with this link that I've got right here, you click the blue button and then you get taken to a choice page and you choose the boot camp. There will be a getting started checklist that you will have to work your way through before you can start your day 1, and you will be on your own time frame for working through that. A lot of people get through it in half a day. Other people take days and days and days. So yes, you will be on your own time frame. Karen says, where do you sign up for the Bright Line Eating Bootcamp? Although I resist the idea of bootcamp and I like Reboot Resume so much more. Karen, I love you. You're so sweet. I just want to say, of course you like Reboot Resume so much more because honestly, okay, I'm just going to say we've been marketing Reboot Resume, right? Like, of course, I've made it sound super attractive. If we were in the middle of a bootcamp launch, you would be like, I'm all about that bootcamp thing. It's exactly what I need, right? I mean, it's just the magic of like, it's what we're talking about, right? Now, I will say, yes, go sign up for the bootcamp. And I'm just saying, girlfriend, brace yourself, because when people actually do the Bright Line Eating Bootcamp and they lean into it, it's the best time of their life. We get people signing up for the bootcamp again, 2 and 3 and 4 times. They're already thin. They're already in a right-sized body. They're already happy, thin, and free. They want to do the bootcamp again. It's like they want to reclaim some kind of glory day because the bootcamp is so amazing. So I love you that you're like expressing a little grumpitude for needing to sign up for the bootcamp first, but really you're in for something that's way better than you're anticipating. But your question is, where do you sign up for the Bright Line Eating Bootcamp? Right here, this blue button that says, what does it say? It says like, I don't know, something about signing up. What does it say? I forget. It says secure your spot now. Click that button, and I believe it takes you to a page where you get to choose the bootcamp or Reboot Resume. Okay? All right. What is the name of key number 3? Lots of people asking this. Okay, let's scroll back. Lots of people need to know about key number 3. Okay. Should I show? I'll just say it. I'm not going to show you. Key number 3 is to conceive of your goal in the right way. It's understanding that it's having the goal that makes you happier, not reaching the goal that makes you happier. So another way to put that is the moment you set the goal, notice and appreciate the boost in well-being that happens right now. And don't expect any additional benefits downstream. The benefits come today. That's key number 3. You need to understand that about a goal, because if you don't, you set yourself up for the Marilyn Monroe, Elvis Presley effect, which is terrible depression, isolation, and disillusionment when you've achieved everything you ever thought you might want to achieve and are still freaking miserable because you weren't paying attention to the journey along the way. And you expected that, well, I should be happy now. I've achieved this, and I should be happy now. I've achieved this. No. It doesn't work that way. So conceiving of your goal in the right way is key number 3. As you travel down the path, conceive of your goal in the right way. Don't misunderstand. Achieving the goal isn't going to make you happier. Having the goal makes you happier. Okay? Okay. Cynthia says, I don't have a lot of weight to lose. I'm a 5 on the susceptibility scale, but I have chaotic eating habits. I've done Bright Line Eating, the challenge, 4 times, and started the bootcamp but didn't finish. I need to build better habits. Will the Reboot Resume program be for me? Cynthia, my sense is that you haven't prioritized really doing this because you've estimated that the payoff isn't going to be worth it for you, basically. Like, you don't have much weight to lose. You're lower on the susceptibility scale, which right there creates a saboteur that's opting you out. Like, I don't really need to do this. And I don't really need to do that. I've done, I started the boot camp, but I didn't finish. Why would Reboot Resume be any different, sweetheart? If nothing changes, nothing changes. I don't get the sense that the course isn't gonna like be the magic bullet. Because the issue has been, based on your pattern of behavior, that you don't do the course. Reboot Resume is an amazing course, but I'm not sure you'll do it. Why would you do it? You haven't you've signed up for the 14-day challenge 4 times and you've started the boot camp. And you started off by hedging everything. I don't have a lot of weight to lose. I'm a 5 on the susceptibility scale. It's important information, and it explains to me probably why you're not doing it. So my question for you is, why do any of this? I mean, why does it matter if you have chaotic eating habits? I don't know if it doesn't matter enough to you to straighten out your eating habits. I think you need to really look at your why. Why would you do this? If you get clear on your why, and you decide that it's big enough, that it is in fact where you want to focus, if it is your self-concordant goal to become more in alignment with your eating habits, then sure, Reboot Resume will be a great course for you. But of course, it'll only work if you do it, right? Christine, how does this help someone who has strong perfectionistic tendencies? Oh, Christine, I'm going to be addressing that all the way through Reboot Resume. So, for example, daily video, 66 days, right? You miss a couple of days of videos, let's say, whatever, spouse is in the hospital, something happens, right? God forbid. But okay, something happens, you miss a couple videos. Your tendency is going to not allow yourself to do anything with the videos from today until you watch the video from 2 days ago that you missed, and then the one from yesterday that you missed. But because you don't have time to watch 3 videos, you're not going to watch today's video either. You're going to go into tomorrow, and now you got 4 videos to watch. We're going to address that perfectionistic tendency with a strong invitation and messaging to allow yourself to watch today's video, even if you've missed a few. That today's video is for you today. This is the day for that video. Watch today's video. Let the other ones go. Maybe you'll circle back around to them in the future if you feel like it, but those videos were for those days. This video is for today. For every challenge that I give you, I'm going to ask you to show up consistently to it, and then I'm going to give you little tools for if you aren't perfect, and invite you to practice using them, and invite you to sort of practice in language and experience and share in the community around how hard that is. Like, do this action every day, put an X on this calendar. When you've done it, pretty soon you're going to have a strong urge not to break the chain of X's. But then when you do it, it's going to be like, whoa, a big pattern interrupt to actually just get back on track. I'm going to invite you to put a big heart over the day that you missed. Not leave it blank, put a big heart, and then go back to your X's. And we're going to be posting pictures of our calendars like, look, people aren't perfect, but look at their X's and their hearts. It's all good. Kathy T says, is there a recommended limit to the number of goals you set at one time? For example, setting a goal related to health, one for finances, one for family time, etc. Yeah, basically, the fewer the better. Like 1 or 2 at a time, no more. You could set more goals for 2019. Just don't expect yourself to do them all at once. Don't start them all now. Like once you've got a few things set, layer in more later, right? Like that graph showed. Valerie says, I'm in my goal weight range, bright line turtle here, and I'm a dedicated bright lifer. I have very occasional breaks, and I'm able to resume immediately. Is Reboot Resume for me or just a continuation in Bright Lifers and Maintenance House? Reboot Resume is not at all a continuation in Bright Lifers and Maintenance House. It's a completely different program. So the question for you, Valerie, is, do you want a different perspective on your program? Do you want to deepen it? Do you want to, like, Reboot Resume is using completely different languaging, completely different exercises, completely different videos, a completely different orientation toward what it is to do bright line eating. If you want that sort of like, I mean, it's the same old stuff, right? Like, I'm not going to tell you to I'm not going to make up some crazy thing, right? But do something crazy other than your food. Like at the end of the day, we write down what we're going to eat the night before. The next day we eat only and exactly that. There's a set of basics around here, but this is a completely different orientation toward them, a completely different invitation. I mean, it starts off with a set of inventory and exercises. They're just completely different. So if you want 180-degree different view on your program that you're already doing that will give you awarenesses that you haven't had so far, then sure, it's for you. But it sounds like what you're doing is working. So, I mean, this will allow you to fine tune a lot of stuff and like think more deeply about what you're doing, what you have done, what's worked for you, what hasn't. So it's kind of up to you. Jennifer says, so if I've been successful keeping my weight at my goal weight and I don't need to keep a food journal or follow many of the other support tools, but I do keep bright lines and I know what foods I can now eat and stay within those foods regularly, do I need to resume class? It sounds like maybe not, Jennifer. I mean, same answer that I just gave to Valerie. I'm curious how high you are on the susceptibility scale. If you're super high on the susceptibility scale, then you're teetering, honestly. Like, if you're super high on the susceptibility scale, what you're doing right now, odds are, just for my own, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, sweetheart, but I have seen a lot of people do this for a long time, and I've seen what tends to work and what tends to not work. My estimation, based on the experience of the patterns that I've seen in the past, is if you're super high on the susceptibility scale, a 9 or 10, what you're doing right now is set up to fail long term. It's not sustainable long term, in which case you should do reboot resume, and you should consider taking a look at the program in a different way. If you're a 6 or a 7, 5, 6, 7, it's quite possible that you've settled into a rhythm that you're going to be able to maintain, in which case the question is, do you just feel like doing the course, you know, because you feel called to deepen your journey? Okay. Justin, again, says, my partner and I find that breakfast and lunch are easy peasy. Dinner is our downfall. I believe this is so because breakfast is a simple meal and we're fresh in the morning. Lunch I prepare on Sunday for the whole week, as you mentioned, so it's very bright and shiny. Dinner is harder. I prepare as much as I can, chop veggies, etc., but it takes more work. Sauteing, frying, and measuring. I don't think it's feasible to pre-measure every ingredient, especially ones that don't keep well after being prepared. That's all work, and unfortunately just difficult enough to let the saboteur wiggle his way in, especially since I live in a city with a plethora of delivery and takeout options. How do I make dinner easier? I would consider simplifying your sort of recipes a little bit. So here's what dinner looks like for me. I mean, you want to be thinking protein, vegetable, salad, right? You said you prep stuff on Sunday for the whole week. You could prep salad crunchies for the whole week as well, right? Like a bunch of chopped up carrots, a bunch of chopped up celery, a bunch of chopped up peppers, a bunch of chopped up veggie, whatever, onions, whatever. Put them in a huge baggie, and then you got like tubs of lettuce or like wherever you get your lettuce. Like salad is now an assembled job. It's like lettuce, crunchies, done. Cooked vegetables, you develop sort of an affinity for 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 different types of cooked vegetables. Like, you know, one recipe would be sliced portobello mushrooms and sliced red bell peppers in a big pot. Balsamic vinegar, cook down. Brussels sprouts, spray oil on a pan, Brussels sprouts on a pan, in the oven, 30 minutes, it's out, it's done. Right? You get like 5 different options or whatever like that, stuff that you like, right? Steamed, broccoli, done. And then some kind of protein. Tonight we're cooking salmon. Tonight we're cooking baked tofu. Tonight we're cooking whatever, right? You make enough of that, and it's like you get some for other meals as well. And it's like, if that proves to be too hard, then you might be of the sort that it'd be better to prep it all on Sunday. Like just prep your dinner as well and just kind of do dinner like you do lunch. I don't know how high you are on the susceptibility scale. But my sense is that you're trying recipes and stuff that feels complicated, that's like complicated and it's throwing things off. Try to make your dinner kind of as simple as your breakfast and your lunch, like just simpler would be my thought. Lisa says, when we do reboot resume, do we get access to Bright Lifers at the end? Yes. Can you say what's available in that? It's a lot. Access to our entire libraries of past, webinars, coaching calls with me, the morning accountability call, which we hop on and it's recorded every day. The tribe stays so connected that way. A fun thing called the Gideon Games, which is a contest we run every 3 months. You can hop on a team if you want. And the way the Gideon Games work is that teams of 10 people compete for the total most cumulative Brightline days. And then the winning team hops on in my private Zoom video room line for a special treat at the end of the Gideon Games to celebrate their winning. There's so much. There's like all kinds of maintenance support. So, we really hold your hand and help you as you get down to maintenance. All kinds of special interest subgroups so that, if you want to really walk this journey with folks from your religion, or if you really want to dive into exercise, and, we've got Bright Lifers on the Move, a special, cohort of people who, really are into making exercise a big part of their journey, or, there's so many things. The investment for it is dramatically discounted at the moment that you end Reboot Resume, or the boot camp. It's $119 a month, and I think at the end we right at that point, at that juncture point, we cut it down to $79 a month. And then if you want to sign up right then for the year, it's half off that. So I think that comes out to $474 for the year. Jessica B says, thank you so much for these webinars. I love them. I've been trying to do Brightline Eating for over a year and I keep failing. I realize that this might be because my husband is the one who really wants me to lose weight. So maybe it's not a self-concordant goal. Is there a way around this? I'm overweight and I know it would be in my best interest to lose it, but I keep sabotaging myself. Now, I think you're onto something, sweetheart. I think you're onto something. I'm curious about the dynamic there and around, like, I can almost feel, you haven't said much and I don't even know you, right? But I can feel the sort of inner rebel just going like, nobody likes their spouse to tell them they have to lose weight, right? Like so I can feel like an inner part of you just going like, so yeah, I would definitely think that there's some taking a look of that would be helpful. It's interesting that you love the webinars and you're, clearly there's a part of you that's showing up for you, right? But it really feels like your marital dynamics are complicating things. And I don't know, when you say you've been trying to do Brightline Eating for over a year and you keep failing, do you mean like you've been trying to do the boot camp? Like you've been really showing up to do it? I don't know what you mean. You know what I mean? If you want to post, I'm kind of curious. Margot says, hi, it's Margot in New York City, and I signed up for Reboot Resume, but I haven't watched the 4 videos. Do I need to watch those to be successful in Reboot Resume? No, not necessarily. I would watch video 2, Margot. I would watch video 2. Throwing your backpack over the wall, says Donna. I've had those extreme peaks and valleys and been in the danger and destruction zone enough that many people don't believe I'll ever achieve happy, thin, and free. Your thoughts on what to tell them and myself? What I love about Brightline Eating is that it's given me hope again. Yeah, I wouldn't throw your backpack over the wall with your friends and family. I would throw it over the wall in Brightline Eating, like sign up for the boot camp. And like, here would be a way to throw your backpack over the wall, your knapsack over the wall. Let's imagine, I don't know you, Donna. I don't know if you're new to Brightline Eating, if you're thinking about doing the boot camp. But let's imagine you do the boot camp, right? You get into your Facebook house, right? Remember what I said earlier to someone who asked, like, what would be the way to set a goal to lose weight that's Brightline Eating friendly, that like is in alignment with what I just talked about in this webinar? And I said, well, the the thing to track would be, I'm a person who does this. I'm a person who's doing bright line eating for real. So what you could post is you could create, some little format that says, every single week I will post this. Or maybe better yet, every night I will post. Today, the level of effort I put into my bright line eating journey, into my boot camp experience, was this on a scale from 1 to 10. Not that I'll always crush it, but that I'll always post. Here was, and maybe commit, like I will post my food for the next day, and I will post today, my level of commitment and my level of showing upness to my bright line eating journey was this number. Track it. And throw your knapsack over the wall by telling everybody, I will post, here's my, and then copy and paste it into some sort of document or something off to the side. So you could just copy and paste today, here's my food for tomorrow. And today my level of, the degree to which I showed up for my bright line eating journey was, blank out of 10 or blank out of 5 or whatever. Deborah says, I'm an introvert and totally fear making phone calls. Can Reboot Resume help me? Yes. Yes. KP says, I've read the book. I've done the 14-day challenge, and I've lived bright line eating for 53 days. I've not done a boot camp. I understand the food and the actions. I need more help with the support and the concept of sticking with my bright lines strictly and consistently. I have 25 to 30 pounds to lose. I signed up for Reboot Resume, but I'm still struggling with knowing which would be best, the boot camp or Reboot Resume. Will there be more than one house in Reboot Resume, or will it be one giant group? Resume House is one giant group. The boot camp is broken down into smaller groups. That is one slight difference between the two. It's really up to you, sweetheart. It's up to you. Why don't you just stay in Reboot Resume? Ellen wants to know, can you do the boot camp without a smartphone or an iPhone? Yes. Marie says, I understand the concept of establishing the identity and then choosing the actions. What if believing we are the identity we want is difficult? Don't the actions then change our identity? It feels tricky starting with the identity. Or are we working on our identity with the actions, especially my identity of eating healthy? What if at this moment I don't want to eat healthy? Don't I then not get hung up on the identity and start with the actions that will hopefully change my identity? Yeah, great point, Marie. Yes, actions change our identity. There's a bidirectional relationship there. So identity causes actions, and actions change identity. So the challenge, Marie, is that, if you're not willing to eat healthy, if trying on that identity is like, I don't want that identity, that's a tricky one. I always say I'm not in the convincing business, and I say it kind of flippantly and like, what I mean by that is like, I'm not really here to serve people who would rather just go eat their pizza and their ice cream and their chips. I'm here to serve people who are desperate to not eat that stuff and haven't been able to figure out how to not, either how to stop or how to stay stopped once they stop. So Marie, I can't tell by what you've written the nature and the entrenchedness of your resistance. I can't tell from what you've written. I would need to talk to you. So I guess what I would say is you almost certainly need one of the programs that involves coaching if you're going to do it at all. I think your options are don't do it because you don't want it, right? Like if you don't want it, don't do it. If it's not a self-concordant goal, then don't do it. But if you are going to do it, do a program that involves some coaching because you're going to need some help from me and my Bright Line Eating staff to help sort out that resistance. Allison says, in Reboot Resume, how does Bright Line Eating encourage truthful self-evaluation of willingness without causing the willpower-destroying shame of failure? How is the question, are you willing, helpful? Yeah, I think a more helpful question is, where do you notice resistance and what do you think that's about, right? The resistance is the thing. Like it's the most interesting part. It's like when it comes up, it's like, yeah, why? What is that about? Reboot Resume is going to be the most gentle, the most nuanced in many ways of the Bright Line Eating courses. It keeps in mind people are coming from such different perspectives, and a lot of people who sign up for Reboot Resume are completely in the ditch. Like just their eating has gotten so bad and it's so black that they can't even imagine being successful again. Everything from that to people who are completely successful and just want to deepen their program, right? And so how do we encourage self-evaluation in general? By just sort of gently handing a flashlight and like holding your hand while you shine it. Like, let's just see what we see there and get curious about it. Ellen says, why is this not just another diet? If I could have given up consuming sugar, I would have done it decades ago. True that, Ellen. Oh, I feel ya. Anyone who's done Bright Line Eating for any length of time knows and sometimes they say to me, they're like, you're right. It's really not about food. It's really not about the food. We create a system. We walk you through setting up a system that's so comprehensive. I mean, one of the sort of pat answers that I could give there is that a typical diet asks you to handle execution over the long term on your own. It says, here's what to eat and here's what to not eat. Now you're good. Go do that. Don't eat sugar, Ellen. Not good for you. Causes cravings, You're like, thanks, Dr. Thompson. Awesome. That'll help a lot, right? Yeah, I know that doesn't help. So what I do is I help you create a system that before you know it is having you eat the right things at the right time without even noticing. And like it's completely automatic. We're going to get the part of your brain that executes your teeth brushing to handle your eating. And it's a gradual process. It doesn't happen overnight. Just like my kids when they were 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 did not brush their teeth morning and night overnight. It took time to get them to brush teeth automatically without reminding. But when you focus on setting up a system that way, where the right thing to eat is the easiest thing to eat, is the automatic thing to eat, breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day, you get a different outcome. And it takes a lot of stuff. It takes support. It takes a new identity. It takes this community. It takes creating enough space between, life coming at you and your reaction. That's why we practice meditation in the morning, because you need to create that pause in there. There's a lot to it. Like, it's not a diet because we have built this entirely integrated system. I mean, diets don't really hammer at you to you need to write a gratitude list. You need to meditate. You need to do all these things. These are the things that actually do the resume reframe, right? Raising the bar up and creating, you're still going to undulate, but what you've been doing has resulted in your cycles crashing you into the danger and destruction zone where you pick up sugar again, right? We're going to raise that all up. And it's all these other things that raises it up. I don't know if you saw the psychology. Ellen, did you see the psychology and neuroscience of Reboot Resume? in that webinar, I explain how it happens, how the brain changes, how the psychology changes. I recommend that you watch that webinar. I believe we're replaying it now several times a day for the next couple of days. So if you want to know where to get access to it, check your email inbox if you've been on our email list for a little bit, or go to Reboot Resume in 2019, that Facebook group, and go under the announcements and just scroll down. The Psychology and Neuroscience of Reboot Resume is a webinar that I just gave a couple days ago, and it's replaying right now. And it really explains the nature of the integrated system and how each of the components creates the structure that means you don't go back to the old foods. Katie says, I've found that the term resume is a little too cute for what I find to be a very difficult fight fraught with miserable consequences. Will you describe various levels of resuming and how to deal with addictive consequences? Yeah, I get you, Katie. It sounds like you're really high on the susceptibility scale. It sounds like you've got a brain like mine. It can be really brutal. In Reboot Resume, I mentioned 4 resume roadmaps, and the 4th one is going to be like the resume roadmap for like if you're really in the ditch. This is one of the reasons that I had to hire another coach to help coach this program, because we needed to expand our coaching staff to accommodate, the number of people that signed up for this program. We've been interviewing for a while, and we ended up hiring someone who has over 10 years leading workshops at the Hazelden Betty Ford Center, because it's the premier addiction facility in the world. And I knew that, we would be working with folks who have that experience. Like, this is no joke. I've been addicted to crystal meth. I've been addicted to crack cocaine. I have spent days upon days upon days upon days in a crack house, smoking crack around the clock, and kicking sugar and flour, kicking addictive foods has been harder by far. So don't be fooled, Katie. We put a cute little Z in there into resume, but that is not at all indicative of any sort of glibness. We got you. I know how hard this is. Laura C. says, using the analogy of spinning plates on top of poles, that's what it feels like to incorporate multiple parts of BLE. Any tips? Yeah, Laura, do it with one of our courses, either the bootcamp or Reboot Resume, and easy does it. Take your time. Just do what the course is asking you to do right then. And if you can, simplify the rest of your life. Practice saying no as much as you can to other things. It does require a bit of prioritization. It really does. Sade or Sade or Sade says, I started the bootcamp but haven't given it 100%. Finished all the modules. I've been pretty wavy with my bright lines. I feel like I should throw myself fully into the bootcamp before assessing whether or not Reboot Resume is for me. Would really love your thoughts here, Susan. I trust you. I hear you saying that you want to do the bootcamp and do it right. So yeah, sign up for the bootcamp again. You get a huge discount doing it a second time. So yeah, do the bootcamp again. Mary White, just love what you do. You were born to do this. So very grateful. Am in Reboot Resume. Today is my day 200. Happy, thin, and free. Crystal Vaser. Boom, Mary. So stoked for you. 2 questions. I am someone who has a telephone that weighs 800 pounds. Suggestions for overcoming phone call phobia. Should I wait to begin? And then second question, should I wait to begin exercising until I complete reboot resume because of the cognitive load? On the second question, probably yes. On the first question, have you checked out experiment 1 yet on that bonus module, my custom successful support system? I want you to just do that experiment. Run it. Run the experiment. Don't give yourself any wiggle room or excuses. Just run the experiment, Mary. And go into Resume House and note the threads in there on this topic and the people posting their phone numbers. You're in the same boat with everybody else, sweetheart. So right now you're considering yourself to be an outlier or some sort of exception maybe or whatever. You're not. You're typical. You're totally typical. So pick up the phone and talk to somebody about how you both hate making phone calls. It'll be awesome. Okay. Teresa says, I have gastroparesis, so I need to blend my food sometimes. So will the Bright Line Eating Bootcamp work for me? I've become a food addict and I need to correct this bad pattern. Teresa, if you have to, you have to. Sometimes we have to do things medically that are not, Bright Line Eating sort of straight and narrow. If you have to, you have to, right? You're going to go in for a colonoscopy, you got to drink a sugar, preparation thing, No one ever gets triggered by it because it's medicine. If you're just blending as minimally as necessary for the medicine that you need for your condition, it'll be fine. C says, I have never created a Facebook account. Well, I have to participate in the support and boot camp. There is support offered outside of Facebook, but it is from the coaching calls. The online support group is in Facebook. So if you want to participate in that, you will need to create a Facebook account. However, people get value, tremendous value out of the boot camp without that. There will be an invitation to just consider in there. There's a video that talks about this, that you might want to consider just doing it anyway. And creating a little quick Facebook account. It takes 3 minutes to set up a little Facebook account. You don't even have to tell your family and friends that you're doing it. And you don't have to use it for anything other than this course and the support that's offered to you in it. Some people choose to do that, and it can be a really strong choice to make for yourself, just a gift to yourself. And if you choose not to do that, you are self-responsible and you get to make your choices. Like, that is fine. It's a trade-off, right? So if you decide that your aversion to setting up a Facebook account is stronger than your desire for that support, that's absolutely an empowered choice that you can make. And people get tremendous value out of the bootcamp without being in the Facebook group. Sharon says, is the program set up on eating the same meals over and over? I'm trying to believe I could do this. Not really, Sharon. There's so much variety. In Bright Line Eating, you're allowed to eat any whole real food that exists on planet Earth. I mean, think about, so for example, just to explain how the food plan works. For breakfast, one of the things you'll eat is a fruit, okay? But doesn't mean you have to eat blueberries every day. You know, blueberries some days and strawberries, and then next day have a banana, and then the next day have an orange, and the next day have a pomelo, and then the next day have some kiwis. Like, you can vary it as much as you want. You get me? So there are certain categories and quantities of foods, and then there's a whole universe of whole real food to eat, to choose from. You could pick different fruits for a month and not repeat. I mean, you'd have to have a grocery store that had a lot of variety of fruit, just saying, but yeah, you know what I mean. Okay. Dorothy says, over the years of goal setting, I've thrown backpacks over the wall in an effort to be more accountable, and now have a pile of backpacks on the other side of the wall. I hesitate to yet again advertise or cement my goals. How can I cement my goals and avoid the perceived eye rolls of those I share my new identity with? I've done the Bright Line Eating Bootcamp and had some success, but went back to old habits. Dorothy. It's up to you, sweetheart. You don't have to throw another backpack over the wall. You're so cute. So if you did the boot camp and had some success but went back to old habits, I just want to ask you a pointed question. Did you not sign up for Bright Lifers? Did you just think, well, I got this now? And that would be the lesson, right? We don't get to leave the environment that provided those results and still keep the results. You change your environment back to what it used to be. In this obesogenic environment, you slide back. That's the way it goes. So, yeah, I mean, as long as our food environment stays whacked out the way it is, we have to create a bright line eating bubble. And we call it the mothership. You got to stay on the mothership. You get off the mothership, it's not going to the same destination anymore, All right. Hi, Deb from Syracuse here. Is there any research that shows how long one needs to stay in a right-sized body before they're safe from falling off the wagon? I did the 14-day challenge in the boot camp starting in January, got to my goal by June, stayed there for about 2 months, then proceeded to plummet into the danger and destruction zone and have gained back at least half the weight. I'm a hardcore 10 on the susceptibility scale, and I'm going to do the Reboot Resume program, but I'm hoping there's some amount of time that I can plan on that will result in being safer from another failure. Thank you very much, Deb. Deb, if you're a 10, you say a hardcore 10 on the susceptibility scale, I have sobering news for you. You never in your entire life get to leave the supportive environment and the pattern of daily habits that you set up in Bright Line Eating. You just don't. If you want to stay happy, thin, and free, you have to keep doing this day in and day out. You're going to have to jack yourself up and acknowledge and just, accept. It's a bitter pill to swallow. I get it. I mean, it's not that bitter once you've accepted it because it's like this way of life is awesome. It's awesome. Like, I benefit every day from living this way. I love living this way. But it does require that mental reframe of it means staying in Bright Lifers. It means writing down your food. It means all that stuff. You don't get to just leave and keep the benefits. I'm sorry. That's what it means to have a brain like we have. Tony says, I finished a boot camp around the second week of November, and I'm now at maintenance. I've been doing Bright Line Eating since October 2017, and I'm almost at my body goal. Since beginning maintenance, my lines have been somewhat wobbly, but I've always been able to resume right away. I'm also a Bright Lifer. I've released 55 pounds, and I know that Bright Line Eating is now my identity. Do you think it would behoove me to do Reboot Resume? Yeah, Tony, I do. Totally. If your lines are starting to be wobbly since starting maintenance, yeah, totally. Teresa says, I'm afraid I may just be too stubborn for Reboot Resume. I'm not a person who enjoys meditation, phone calls, Facebook, or keeping a journal, so I'm not doing them. I am a Bright Lifer, and I'm in a mastermind group that I love. After 140 days in Bright Line Eating, I'm about halfway to my goal weight. I'm a 10 on the scale. My bright lines have been slipping for about 10 days now. If I'm not using all the tools I already have available to me through the Bootcamp House, the Bright Lifer House, and all the checklist actions, is Reboot Resume right for me? Maybe not yet, Teresa. I hear tons of resistance in you, so why don't you just go get some pain and some research on board and then come back when you're ready. How's that for some tough love for you? Renas says, I signed up for Reboot Resume and I'm working through it. I'm a 7 or an 8 on the scale. My problem is that I don't identify with being a food addict since I only started having problems with my weight and food in the last 10 years with increasing stress levels. What I've come to now is that I'm willing to show up and do the work, and that currently I am a food addict. A small voice, maybe my saboteur, tells me once you leave the US and go back to your old lifestyle, you will stop being a food addict. But my higher self tells me that I will never be able to go back to the way I was 10 years ago. How do I deal with that voice or belief that I am not a food addict and that I can go back to eating the way I did? I just want to point out that those are different things, Renas. Being a food addict. I like to think of it as a susceptibility scale. You're thinking of it as a binary distinction. Food addict, not food addict. You don't get that from me. I talk about a scale. You're a 7 or an 8 on the scale. So it's a separate question whether you get to go back to the way you used to eat or the way you used to live or whatever. In general, that tends not to work, but a lot of people need to do their research. I had to do that research. I was like perfect squeaky bright lines for 8 years and then went out and thought, well, maybe I could become an intuitive eater. Took me 2.5 months to like run back to this way of life with my tail between my legs. but I'm a 10 plus plus on the susceptibility scale. Here's what I know, Renas. I had that voice in my head about my alcoholism. I've been sober for 24 years. And I just, one day at a time, didn't pick up a drink. Like I kept in the environment, which is a 12-step program for alcoholism. I kept in the environment that would keep me protected while I had doubts running through my head. Am I an alcoholic? Am I not an alcoholic? It took me about 1.5 years, 2 years for those doubts to really subside. I kept in the environment that would keep me safe. Every now and then I go through a period of months or years where I doubt my alcoholism again and I consider picking up a drink, and I just don't, though, but sometimes it's a close call. But I stay in the environment that would protect me. So one thing you can do, Renas, is don't worry about those doubts. Just do reboot, resume. You're in it. Just do it. Just keep kicking that can down the road because your brain is improving every day, meaning you're better off today than you were a little while ago. Your weight's coming off, right? And at some point, maybe you'll leave the United States and go back to your own lifestyle, and then you'll have some choices to make about whether you stay close to the mothership, stay in Bright Lifers, etc. If you choose to stay in the environment that supports you, you'll probably live happy, thin, and free long term. If you decide to leave Bright Lifers and the environment that supports you, you'll probably backslide, and then you'll get a choice to come back. Sue says, what is your long-term 1 to 5 years out success rate for sustained weight loss? We have data on a fairly sizable cohort of people 2 years out, and 85% are maintaining a clinically significant weight loss. Catherine says, I want to sign up now, but I'm going away for a month in about 6 weeks. So ideally should start when I get back. Can I get the same deal but start later? Do you mean for the boot camp or reboot, resume? Yes, you can sign up for the boot camp now and start later. Reboot, resume is a little harder because it's a course that's actually unfolding in real time. I mean, reboot, resume is a course too, but it starts on a rolling basis. We've figured out how to offer the boot camp in a way that starts on a rolling basis, and there's cohorts of people that go through, but we start them all the time. There's a lot of people who sign up for the boot camp all the time. So, Catherine, if you sign up for the boot camp, you can sign up now, which means you'll get the bonus package that I'm offering now. But then you'll just then hedge your start. You just won't go through the getting started checklist until you get back. Ellen says, I'm a grazer. Will this program help with the anxiety I get when I don't graze periodically? It's big. Yes, Ellen, it will. Sarah says, is it true that fat cells shrink but never go away? Yes. Madeline, I did the 14-day challenge and read your book. My lines were bright and now they're blurred. I'm very high on the susceptibility scale, an 8. I'm about 20 pounds overweight and I've been for a while despite efforts to be thinner. Which program is best for me, boot camp or resume? I would say do the boot camp. You're still kind of at the beginning. Paula says, what is the difference between automaticity and having an addiction to a right food? You had mentioned this week in a previous video that we may be getting too stuck on a food, that if someone takes it away, we get crazy that it is gone, that switching it up should be possible. If not, it might not be the right food for you. Yet automaticity to me means that I'm eating the same thing, breakfast in this case, every day so that I don't have to think about it. Yet if I have to make a change to this breakfast, I get flustered. I don't believe that's because I'm addicted to this food, just that I don't want to take the time to think things over to be sure all is within my limits. Yeah, I get you, Paula. The difference is mental chatter in between the meals. Like if a food lights you up, you're thinking about it outside of mealtime. You're thinking, oh, I can't wait to have my thing. That's the difference. it's also usually a more light up food, which I guess you wouldn't know what those are, but like, sort of breakfast sausage, right? As compared with, I don't know, just think of like certain foods are just more addictive, even if they're within the Bright Line Eating food plan. Like cheese is more addictive than tofu. Pineapple is more addictive than an apple. Just certain foods are like, Italian sausage is more addictive than, steamed tilapia. Okay. How do you know you've reached automaticity of a behavior and are ready to learn a new behavior to moderate cognitive load? Davida. So automaticity is a feeling that you'll notice happening. It means that like your brain is suggesting to you, you've got to go do that thing because it's that time of day, or it's, whatever. Okay, this piece of paper is going to drive me nuts. These are the papers that my full cup of water at the beginning of the, remember I said I spilled a whole cup of water? Those are the papers that are drying out. Okay. Yeah, so automaticity is a feeling. And you'll know because your brain suggests at that time of day that you do it, that it sort of happens of its own accord. Just think conceptually about what the difference in what it feels like. Like, think back, Davida, to when you learned how to drive. So here you are learning how to drive. Do you remember like the effort that it took to like just do basic things, right? To like get the car in gear, and then like, to, if you're getting onto a highway or something, to like accelerate and merge into the flow of traffic. Like it just took so much cognitive load. I remember I learned to drive from a girlfriend of mine. I was 14 and she was 18, and she just, she had her own car, and we stayed up all night. I was from San Francisco, and she stayed up all night with me. She had a stick shift, and we just drove around. She just let me drive her car. And at the in the early hours of the night when we first started, 11 p.m. or whatever, I was really like having to focus a lot on the stick shift, and it was so hard. And by the end of the night, I was just like, it took me basically one night to get automaticity with most of that driving. So you'll notice it because it happens somewhat effortlessly, somewhat automatically. Your brain suggests it. It's sort of like, grease or no grease on the skids, like it's easy. Christina says, how can I get over the obstacle of getting sick of the same kind of food over and over and very similar flavors over and over? I get gaggy once I reach this point in any diet. You can switch it up, sweetheart. There's tons of other stuff to eat. Again, just because you have to eat fruit doesn't mean you have to eat the same fruit. Carolyn says, I love that you referred to your positive psychology course and the research around happiness during this webinar. Will you be offering Brightline Mind anytime soon? Brightline Mind is my course that is patterned after my college positive psychology class. We are hoping to offer Brightline Mind in 2019. We're not positive exactly when, but yes, we are. Danette says, when in the resume class will the cravings bonus be available? I'm really struggling right now. Yeah, good question, Danette. There's a few things that I think would be helpful more toward the beginning, and the cravings bonus is definitely one of them. I'm not going to promise a specific date because that would be unwise. I'm about to leave town for a little bit. I need to shoot a lot of videos before I leave town, but I can't promise that one will be in there. But I am aware. I just want you to know that I'm aware that one should come sooner than some of the others. Okay. People are asking about wanting to review this material again. What will happen is you will get an email with a link to review it again if you want. There's a replay, which is going to go out to everybody, whether you showed up live for the webinar or Didn't. Everyone's going to get a replay link. Heart Hardcore 10 Syracuse Deb here again. Sorry, just one more quick question. You're so cute. Since I become addicted to anything and everything I like to do or ingest, do you think that curing the food addiction would address all the other addictions? Or is there some other recommended approach to addressing generalized addictions that would be of benefit for the food addiction? Or is your answer the most difficult option of both? Thanks again. So, Deb, I get addicted to almost everything as well. I just have one of those brains. What I've found over the years in my recovery journey is that I've had to pick my battles a little bit, address the ones that are causing a lot of immediate pain and grief. I had to get rid of drugs really early on. Alcohol went with the drugs. Picked up smoking, picked up eating. I had been eating before that, but like with the crack cocaine, I wasn't eating so much. So eating came back, smoking came back, sex. Within 9 months, I had to really start to deal with the food. Kept smoking. Couldn't get the food together. Anyway, you get the idea. It's like, here's one rule of thumb, is in general, if an addiction is really intense, persnickety, and painful, I have found that I've needed to get recovery from people who get that addiction. It's not all generalizable. Like, I couldn't help you with gaming addiction. I don't know anything about recovering from gaming addiction. I mean, I could guesstimate certain things based on my understanding of addiction in general, but like I would be so naive to the specific cues and what it means to like overcome the pull of those cues. And how to like deal with the impact of like if you've been playing video games for 20 hours a day, you know, and then you stop and you have no life anymore because you have just been in your bedroom playing video games. I don't know how to walk people out of that hole. You know what I mean? So focus on, you know, it sounds like food is the thing right now. Focus on that. And, you know, if other major addictions crop up while you're trying to focus on your food addiction, really assess, like, do I really need to deal with this now? If it's majorly disruptive and your life is spiraling out of control, then you have to. Then you need to maybe explore a 12-step program that deals with that addiction, or get targeted therapy or some kind of support for that addiction from someone who really knows. You see what I'm saying? For me, if I'm honest with myself, not all my addictions are at all equally damaging or worth treating, frankly. I'm addicted to caffeine right now. It's not worth treating. It's fine. I drink my coffee black. It escalates up to a certain point and then it levels off. And it's okay for me right now. I'm running at a pretty fast pace. It's actually kind of nice to allow myself to have the caffeine. So, you know, just because I'm addicted to caffeine doesn't mean that, you know, I'm a caffeine addict in need of a treatment program and I got to address that right now, right? So pick your battles. It sounds like food is here right now. It's up in your face. So get treatment for that. And then once you're in your boot camp house, if you have specific questions around other addictions, our coaches in the boot camp have multiple addictions. They'd be happy to talk to you about like the details of like, what else are you dealing with? And is it worth trying to deal with that? You know, get treatment for that one right now. Carol Lee says, I'm really trying not to be negative, but I'm really not trying to be negative, but I feel like I have a legit question. And I've signed up for boot camp starting tomorrow. If the boot camp really works, and there's so many people who've worked the program and been successful, why does it seem like there are so many boot campers and some bright lifers in the ditch and needing the resume course? Carol Lee, you're not being negative at all. That is such a legitimate question, and I'm so glad you asked it. Okay, here's the answer. There's two things. One is that we attract and intend to attract lots and lots of people around here who are seriously, seriously addicted to food. We're talking serious addiction. Research shows that sugar is more addictive than cocaine, right? Okay, here's a study. They took rats. They injected them with intravenous cocaine, shots of intravenous cocaine over and over and over again until the rats were quivering, shaking cocaine addicts. And then they didn't give them a hit of any cocaine for a little while till they were jonesing for a hit. And then in that state, they gave them a choice between another hit of cocaine or some sugar. And in that state, the rats preferred the sugar. They would deny themselves a hit of cocaine so they could get some sugar. Okay? We are talking about a serious addiction here in an environment where it's all around us, more available than any other fix that you could think of. There is no treatment for any addiction that has anywhere near 100% success rate. Addiction is a bitch. Sorry. We take established success rates and like 55x them. We're talking about rates that are like below 1%, right? So the fact that we're not at 100% is like, well, duh, right? We're way better. But here's the other thing. The Bright Line Eating Bootcamp, and ask boot campers, they will tell you this. In many people, the Bright Line Eating Bootcamp works so well that it creates a profound overconfidence bias. It creates automaticity and a feeling of ease. And what happens is people watch other people eating foods with impunity, like not suffering, living in a right-sized body, eating their pumpkin pie at Thanksgiving, eating their whatever. And people don't believe me when I tell them, stay in Bright Lifers, stay close to the mothership, don't take your success for granted. And they walk away from the support. They stop doing the things that got them the success, and then they veer off track. So it's two things. It's that huge success, you know, like a huge multiplier against a really tiny little base rate is like, you know, still far short of 100% and of as it would be, right? So, you know, I don't know what, you know, exactly we would call, I mean, it depends on how you're measuring success and so forth. But let's say, you know, 40% of Bright Line Eating boot campers are wildly successful beyond their wildest dreams. Well, that would be a huge number in the weight loss literature, right? Huge. 60%, 80%, depends on how you count it, right? Losing a significant amount of weight, you know, of people who show up and really try, that's almost everybody. But it creates an overconfidence bias. And people stop taking as seriously what they took seriously when they were in the pain. So it's those two things. And I'm not at all offended that you asked that question. I think it's a very legit question. And if you want to learn from what people, you know, would tell you, those boot campers who are back, you know, to start over, they would say, don't take it for granted. Like, it's a serious thing. You think, like your brain tells you, oh, I'll just deviate a little bit, it'll be fine. And it escalates. It makes you less free. It escalates some more. You create a brain that hounds you for exceptions. And before you know it, you're in the ditch. It starts off so innocently. Jill says, do I really have to do only one goal at a time? Is there a limit to how many goals I can have ongoing at a time? Or baby steps an action goal before they become automatic? You can do whatever you want, Jill. I'm not the Bright Line Eating police, and I'm not the goal police either. It depends on what the goals are. So, for example, if it's an action that you have done in the past with good effect, like you've had that action be automatic in the past. Like for me, when I get back from a trip and I'm off track, I can reinstitute several of my behaviors that I used to have automatic. Like, okay, I'm going to get back to meditating and filling out my nightly checklist and this and that. You know what I mean? So some of it's that. Do you have a history with this thing or not? Some of it has to do with a habit stack. So if you're going to stack the behaviors one after the other, and like the completion of one will lead to the beginning of another. So for example, you could institute a morning routine that consists of, brand new and for the first time, drinking a full glass of water first thing in the morning, doing 2 sun salutations, going to the bathroom and sitting on the toilet and reading, a daily meditation reader that you've got like right there on the toilet lid, and then starting your day, making up a cup of coffee or whatever. Well, you just instituted 3 new behaviors. You're drinking a glass of water, you're doing some sun salutations, and you're reading a morning meditation book, right? But if you chained those together into a habit stack, it might be fine for you to institute all 3 of those at the same time. You see what I'm saying? So it's a little nuanced. And I will just say, in general, the more you bite off and chew at once, the less likely you are to still be doing it successfully a year later. Like, that's just true. Bernice says, in the October 2016 boot camp, I reached my goal weight of 125, losing 25 pounds. In 2019, I would like to transition to the Food Revolution whole life recipes, which are not completely BLE compliant. I'm low on the susceptibility scale and have no desire to binge. In fact, I tend to be a few pounds underweight because I cannot eat all the food on maintenance. I've never felt healthier and happier than I do now. I'm 69 years old, happily retired and married. I don't have the stresses of my younger years, which caused me to overeat. What do you think of my transition? I'm very grateful for you and your teachings. Bernice, I think that sounds lovely. You're low on the susceptibility scale. And I think that you are likely to be quite successful with that transition. And John and Ocean Robbins are 2 of my favorite people ever, and I totally support what you're doing. The fact that you're low on the susceptibility scale is the linchpin, and the fact that you're retired, happily married, have time on your hands to cook and prepare those recipes, all that bodes very well for your success. And I wish you so much happiness and health. Fran says, hi, Susan. Great webinar as usual. I've joined Reboot Resume and I'm committed to this process. My sense tonight is that I will have almost 2 lives. Those that I connect with that have a like mind for bright line eating, and those others that don't have a clue what it's all about. These are the people that I don't feel would be receptive to this way of life. For example, my husband, totally resistant. Is there a way to reconcile these 2 lives? I don't want to have to choose. So I'm not sure exactly. You're phrasing this in a way that I wouldn't. So you're saying you'll have 2 lives. Do you mean the life of you with the people who do bright line eating and the life of you with the people who don't understand bright line eating? You are one person, and we all have intersecting Venn diagrams of social circles, right? So yes, you will have people in your life that really understand bright line eating and people in your life who really don't, but you have lots of things in common with those people who don't understand bright line eating. You have other shared experiences of life. I would encourage you not to think of yourself as being that fractured or separated. As long as you have enough support from people who do bright line eating, that will be good enough. That will be fine. And it's perfectly normal to keep plenty of people in your life for like these other good reasons, who don't do or understand bright line eating. But I'm presuming that you have a foundation of other shared, other shared experiences, values, commitments that make those relationships worthwhile. Melissa says, I did the boot camp partially. However, I was in gray sheet, FAA, RFA, et cetera, and have weighed and measured my food for 20 years. And I spent way too much time in the danger and destruction zone. So I'm like a pariah in those 12-step groups. Others came in, got abstinent, and look at me 10 years later, in and out, and they just don't get it. A terrible feeling of isolation for me. I want to do Reboot Resume and then to be a part of Bright Lifers. Is it okay if I don't go back to boot camp and start over? Sure. Yeah, and I would totally invite you to really invest in Bright Line Eating. We have a community now. It took a while to build it, but we have a community now that I have a long 12-step background, you know that. I personally find as supportive, rewarding, fulfilling, and nurturing, holding, containing as any 12-step community I've ever been a part of. So yeah, I would really invest in Reboot Resume with your time and your focus, and then really invest in Bright Lifers with your time and your focus. Justin says, I've been a Bright Lifer for about 8 months and have taken your suggestion of wearing bunny slippers and dropped my yoga practice at the beginning since it took a heavy toll on my willpower. Let's say I finally get stable enough to start again. How does that fit into the resuming? Since it takes willpower, should I be back off yoga when I feel like I'm heading down, since the food addiction is much more powerful, and wait until I feel stable again? Yeah, that's what I do, Justin. If I'm really on the downslope, I stop all exercise for a period of time until my lines are until like everything feels solid. Here are the things that I put before exercise. All of my food stuff, my food habits and clean food, and meditation. Those things need to be solid and automatic before I layer in any exercise at all. That's just what I do. Devin says, I've been on Bright Line Eating for 18 months, done the 14-day challenge, 4 times boot camp, never completed, managed only 2 of 60 out of 63 days, twice 60 out of 63 days, back-to-back Bright Line Eating days. I'm a Bright Lifer, listening to all the coaching calls, 2 mastermind groups, daily telephonic commit sponsor who features in your book, listened to all the daily calls, watched the last 2 years annual meetup live stream, use the daily checklist, sponsor folk, done Bright Line Freedom, as well as weekly private sessions with Everett for approximately 3 months and still have a few more sessions. I listen to all that I come across and what you recommend. I have invested heavily and all-consumingly, both time and financially. South African Rand, very poor. Gideon Games haven't helped me either. I just let my team down. My wonderful leader, Beth Culp, thought I might be trying to do too much. Yet I cannot string together enough Bright Line days for any success. I still weigh the same, given a few kilos. Is spending more money on Resume going to help me this time? I don't know what to do. Desperate, despondent. Do I join Resume? Devin. Devin, you're working with Everett Considine, and he knows you. Ask him. Ask him. There's no substitute for the type of intuitive sense that he would have having really worked with you. And I just want to extend my love and my understanding, because I have been in a place where my food addiction was that resistant too. I'm one of the people, there aren't that many of us, Devin. There aren't that many of us who have food addiction so strong that we can be doing everything and still eating. For most people, the answer is, oh, well, you're just not doing it. Just get off your duff and do it, and it'll work. And for some of us, even then, it doesn't work sometimes. And the answer is you just gotta let the food addiction run its course, and it will eventually work. Don't quit 5 minutes before the miracle happens. But I just want you to know I know what that feels like. Ellen says, that is an amazing rat study, the sugar versus cocaine. What's the reference? I'd like to tell my MD. Thanks for giving us all this time. I signed up, Ellen. All right, give me a second, Ellen. Hold on. Field trip. All right, I'm going to take you with me here. Field trip. Going to my bookshelf. It's a book called, the study is published in a peer-reviewed journal, but my copy of it is from this book right here, Food and Addiction. It's an awesome book edited by Kelly Brownell and Mark Gold. just saying, Kelly Brownell is morbidly obese. He's one of the leading proponents and researchers on food addiction. And yeah, morbidly obese, like cannot fix his own eating. Okay, and Sergey Ahmed, is sugar as addictive as cocaine? Page 231. It's in my book too, but okay. Is sugar as addictive as cocaine? Let me spell the guy's last name. Ahmed. First name Sergey, Serge. And I bet the reference. So it's actually just a book chapter in this. I'm not sure actually if it was published in addition to this. So yeah, that's where you would find it. You can get that book on Amazon. Karen says, I started boot camp in April of 2017, had an amazing crystal vase. It got smashed at Christmas 2017, and now I'm in the ditch deeply. I recently became vegetarian 3 months ago. Why is it easier for me to hold an I don't eat animals identity than it is to keep an I am a bright line eater identity? I don't know. I mean, for one thing, animal products are not as addictive as sugar, right? So that's one reason. And then I also invite you to ask yourself, what's your motivation for being vegetarian? And is that a stronger why for you, right? Is that, it might also just be that there isn't as much resistance to that identity, right? It's just an easier identity because there's not as much fighting against it. Susan says, I've completed the 14-day challenge with a 3 #weight loss, have a normal BMI, you must mean 3-pound weight loss, have a normal BMI and a right-sized body, but I'm a 10 on the susceptibility scale. I desire freedom from obsession. I want neutrality with food. An old definition of freedom is eating what I want when I want. Is this my saboteur, my inner child? Yeah. It feels like a young part of me. Yes. Please advise. Not ready to invest $4.97. Thank you, Susan, for being on the planet and sharing your light. Happy New Year to you. Blessings. Yeah, this is one of, I talk about this in the boot camp. It's like this story that I tell about this train, right? Like you've heard the story of the little engine that could. This train is like, it's kind of like an Amtrak train. It's zipping around the United States. I don't know if you saw the movie Forrest Gump, right? In the scenes where he's running, and there are these scenes of like sunrises and these just amazing vistas as he's running across the United States. So this train is like that. It's zooming across the United States. And it's thinking, this is awesome. Look at all these beautiful views. And I see the sunrise every day and the sunset every day and the mountains. It's gorgeous. And then, some time goes by and he thinks, but I'm stuck on this track. Like, why do I have to follow this track? Like, what a bummer that I'm stuck on this track. What if I were off the track? Like, why do I have to follow this track? It's so limiting. Look at all the land I don't get to explore because I'm stuck on this track. And he, as that sort of plays in his head, he thinks, yeah, the track is like my imprisonment. So eventually one day he talks himself into getting off the track so he can be free and explore more territory. See all the lands that he hasn't seen, taste their wonderful freedoms. So one day he oomphed himself off the track. And there he sits. Can't go anywhere. And the seasons change and he starts to rust and he thinks, I didn't know how good I had it on that track. It's free, healthy, zooming around. So yeah, Susan, you can listen to your saboteur that tells you that freedom is eating whatever you want whenever you want, but you're not free when you're off the track. You know, right? I will tell you that bright line eating is about being free. The weight loss is people come for the vanity, but they stay for the sanity. So, all right. Brenda says, well, crap. Just finished the 14-day challenge and absolutely loved it. Finally, a program that is for me, and I've signed up for the boot camp but not yet started. Unfortunately, the 2 servings of fat per day sent my gallbladder into rebellion hell, and now I will be undergoing surgery to remove the little sucker. How successful are the fat serving? How essential are the fat servings as recommended to the success of the program? Can I successfully complete boot camp if I'm not following the program to the letter with the 2 servings of fat per day? Okay, so first of all, just saying, my dad's best day of his life was when he had his gallbladder removed. I don't know if he would say that. It was a good thing though. He like getting that little sucker out of there. So Renda, I'm not an MD. Is your doctor going to tell you that you need to remove that much fat from your diet after the gallbladder is actually out? Because it's not, like, bright line eating is not a high fat diet. It's really not. It's moderate. It's like just really middle of the road. Okay, so that's the first question. Are you jumping to a conclusion that you need to eliminate those fat servings? Once the gallbladder is gone, you should be fine. I'm just making that up. Like, I'm not a doctor. Okay. If your doctor says, oh yeah, you got to get rid of those fat servings, it's fine. Yes, you can do bright line eating completely without those fat servings. What should you put in instead? Okay, so for lunch, why don't you do 1.5 proteins and 10 ounces of vegetables instead of 6? And for dinner, why don't you do 1.5 proteins, and that's probably enough. Like, you're fine. Yeah. And just so you know, yeah, I mean, I was going to say, like, nobody does bright line eating to the letter, or like, it's like you moderating things or modifying things. It's totally fine. It's totally fine. Yeah. Cindy says, I'm registered for boot camp, but I haven't hit the start button yet because my ND recently prescribed a FODMAPs, SIBO, and Hashimoto's diet for me. Will BLE easily accommodate FODMAPs, and what advice do you have? Yeah, our coaches are pretty familiar with that. Yep, hop on in. Joanne says, I'm in a right-sized body, so I don't need bright line eating for that reason. I'm intrigued by the psychology, and I want to apply it to several areas of my life. Is there room for this in the program? In other words, may I enroll and get the support for issues other than food? If not, will you please direct me to how I can learn these principles? In other words, any other resources? I would say no, not really. So other resources. I mean, I don't know, sweetheart. What do you mean by you're intrigued by the psychology? I mean, you can read my book, Bright Line Eating. You can, if you're interested in the positive psychology, search online for positive psychology classes. I'm not sure exactly what you're looking for help with, but I mean, there's so many good, like, read this book. Yeah, here's a book. Atomic Habits by James Clear. One of the best books ever. And read my book, and that'll be a good start. Jill says, what do you do for long days? Do you spread out your meals? For example, there's a New Year's get-together tonight. I have some social anxiety and a tendency to isolate myself, so I don't want to just not go. But I want to support myself, my new identity, and my food plan. You can space out your meals. I don't personally. I find that I'll be fine. Like, I just rock up to the party and drink sparkling water with lime, and I'm okay. But yeah, you could space out your meals. Could a positive way of reframing weight loss be, I am and am becoming a person who is eating bright line eating? Yeah. Eileen, yeah, that sounds great. Lauren says, I'm reading the book. I love it. I've found that in the past, my most successful weight loss has come when I've had a solid support group. I really like the idea of creating a mastermind group. Will we have access to how to create a mastermind group in the boot camp? Lauren, yes, totally. Susan says, I've completed the 14-day challenge. Oh, I already Yeah, I've already answered that one. Carol says, where can one find how Bright Line Eating addresses yo-yo dieting, basal metabolism decreases? Carol, for most people, a previous decrease in basal metabolism from yo-yo dieting is not a barrier to getting happy, thin, and free with Bright Line Eating. Steady weight loss is really common on the boot camp. By the time that would be an issue, you'll be in Bright Lifers already, and then I'll just coach you through it. I work with people on plateaus and so forth a lot. It's fine. We'll get you through it. Chipper says, I really dislike vegetables, especially cooked vegetables. I do well with breakfast and lunch, however, I struggle with dinner. This is what eventually derails me each time. Any suggestions? Can Reboot Resume help me with this? Gosh, I got asked this question on the last webinar, and I had to admit that I have a hard time with this because I don't have this experience personally. I've always loved vegetables. I love all food. I'm kind of like a food whore. Like, I just love all food. I mean, really, it's kind of, sorry, I just offended some people by saying that. Didn't mean to. Chipper, I would say that I'm not the best person to ask that question of. Like, get into the program and then post it in the online community and get support from people who have successfully overcome their aversion to vegetables. Question, how much do hormones factor into weight loss? I'm low on the susceptibility scale, but I've gained a stubborn 20 pounds through a stressful life event. I'm also in perimenopause. Carrie, Bright Line Eating can really help with that. One of the major ways that hormones play a role in weight loss is it becomes an issue in perimenopause. In perimenopause, what happens is your estrogen levels are really erratic. They plummet sometimes, and then they're normal, and then they crash, and then as you go through menopause, they just decrease. Estrogen is an insulin agonist. Like, it makes your insulin work. And what that does is it protects you against the sugar and flour that you've been eating, and it makes your body sort of metabolize it well. The challenge there is that if your estrogen's gone down, you're not getting that protective effect. So this is why other diets tend not to work, and why if you're still eating sugar and flour, those 20 pounds can become really like persnickety at this time of life, where in your 20s or 30s, you would have lost that weight already. But with Bright Line Eating, because we eliminate sugar and flour, that weight melts off. So we've done research where we've looked at weight loss rates at each decile of life. So how do people lose weight if they're women in their 20s, their 30s, their 40s, their 50s, their 60s, their 70s, their 80s on the Bright Line Eating Bootcamp? And we see essentially flat levels, meaning women in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s are losing weight in the bootcamp at the same rates as women in their 20s and 30s, which is remarkable. We're the only program on planet Earth that I know of that has that effect. So Carrie, if you want to lose that stubborn 20 pounds, the Bright Line Eating Bootcamp would probably, average weight loss is about 15 to 17 pounds. So it would get you largely there. Paula says, if your goal is to be a creative person, is there any extra things to keep in mind with applying these three key points? Yeah, so I would say daily votes for that identity, right? I am a person who fuels their creativity every day. And then creating habits, small baby steps of habits around that identity. The most effective, prolific creative people had really good structures and habits. Stephen King got up at 6 a.m. and wrote until noon. I don't know if I've gotten those hours right, but he had a very disciplined writing practice. James Patterson, same thing, etc. The most prolific artists and creators have actually put like boundaries around their creativity and structured it into their day. Jessica, are there any books you can recommend that would allow us to go deeper on changing our identity? This book here talks a lot about that. Wiley says, keto on BLE? Before you want to do that, go watch my vlog on keto. The vlog is at brightlineeating.com, and then there's a tab that says blog. But yeah, you can do it. Natalie says, as a former bootcamp participant and newly enrolled Resume participant, I struggle with isolation. What is your advice for how to break this character defect? Do the program as outlined. Go check out the success bonus right now and just start doing it. Kate says, what are some books you recommend to read to help keep on the path to bright line eating? I find reading to be an excellent distraction from binge eating. This one right here. Maymuna says, you talked about reducing condiments. Does that include healthy herbs like mint, cilantro, parsley, garlic, and ginger, cinnamon, curry powder? I'm so excited that I signed up for the Reboot Resume. I know I need to surrender 100% to finally get free forever. Maymuna, it could. Maybe not, though. So if you find that you keep your main components of your meal pretty simple, pretty regular, and putting that mint and cinnamon and blah, 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 and you like develop a rhythm with it and you're happy, thin, and free, it's fine. You don't need to simplify beyond that. But if you find that you're still experiencing a lot of cravings and you're eating off plan, you need to simplify even further. So the proof is in the pudding. I know that's a terrible bright line eating saying, but the proof is in the pudding. Like, your food is simple enough if you feel free. Your food is not simple enough if you don't feel free. Natalie says, I loved your mantras in the Bright Line Eating book. As someone who fell far and is enrolled in Reboot Resume, do you have a mantra for the isolator? I need a phrase to use to get me to reach out daily, and that is not my strength. Connection is a blessing. Connection is a gift. Connection is a privilege. Connection is, I don't know. People post thoughts for Natalie. What would be a mantra? Something sweet about connection or support. Support is so sweet. Oh, it is. If you give it a little chance, Natalie, you'll find how sweet it is. It's so good. Marisol, when do things really become automatic? You reference brushing your teeth. Well, I don't have to write that down the night before. Will there ever be a time that things will be automatic? Yeah, but you're asking the wrong question. You're asking, when do I not have to do it anymore? Really, right? The point is, writing down the food becomes automatic. Like, it all becomes automatic, right? Yeah, you don't have to write down to brush your teeth, but the point of writing down your food the night before is to make your food choices in advance, right? I will say this. 5 years after, like, no breaks in your food plan for 5 years, it's usually pretty safe to not write down your food anymore. Danielle says, do you think the amount of goals you set are impacted by the willpower gap? Meaning, is there such a thing of having too many goals at once? Yes, totally. Totally. Kathy W. from Calgary here. I'm headed to India for 7 weeks, leaving January 11th, returning February 28th. I'm not signing up now, but I will when you run it later in the year. I'm counting on it. When might the second run of Reboot Resume be? Honestly, Kathy, I'm not like dodging your question here. I have no idea. We haven't figured out the schedule for 2019 yet. I know I'll want to run Brightline Mind once. I know we'll want to get Reboot Resume going again, but we're probably running Brightline Freedom in the spring. So I just don't know when it's all gonna, and then the book launch, the second book is coming out, the cookbook, in October. So it's gonna be a tight year. I don't know. Can the boot camp be done while traveling for several weeks? We're retired and going for about a 6-week road trip. Some eating in restaurants, some preparing meals. Diane, yeah, it can. You'll have Wi-Fi most of the time, I would imagine. Yeah. Terry says, do you recommend still attending 12 steps as well as Reboot Resume? Also, I'm terrified when the 66 days are up. Will I be able to keep going? Help. You can keep going to 12-step meetings if you want to, sure. Terry, I would say, don't underestimate Bright Lifers. Now, you get, just like everything, you get out of it what you put into it, right? There's a big difference in a 12-step program between someone who's been to a meeting once or twice and dabbled and someone who actually really dives in and works the program, right? But Terry, in my experience, Bright Lifers is equivalent now in potency to any 12-step food program that has ever existed that might even be stronger. It is so strong. So Terry, trust Bright Lifers. When you get to the end of Reboot Resume, trust Bright Lifers and dive in there. Seriously. Cindy says, hi, Susan. Love you to death. I'm on maintenance. 3rd add-on. Signed up for Reboot. Also would love to make steps to get into a serious romantic relationship next year. Any advice on how to frame this so one doesn't throw the other off track? Oh, good point. Well, I would say just keep doing your Bright Line Eating journey. One doesn't need to throw the other off track at all. I wouldn't worry about that. I would frame it as, I do Bright Line Eating. I am a Bright Liner. I am a Bright Lifer. And I need to be my best me so I can attract the right relationship, right? Like, you don't want to attract a relationship from a place of not being your best self, right? So think about what a gift it is to attract a partner from, showing up from the person you are doing Bright Line Eating. Yeah. Loretta says, I'm just in the beginning of Bright Line Eating, 1 month, and I have a long way to go to get to a right-sized body. I remember 40 years ago when I was able to temporarily reach a right-sized body, and it felt so strange. When the time comes, do you help with becoming comfortable in a right-sized body? How long does it take to become comfortable to where it feels normal? Loretta. We do, Loretta. It's a big thing, and there's a lot of focus on that in Bright Lifers. And my honest answer is often years, like a year, 2, 3. There's papers published on how, and don't ask me for references because I'm not even sure, I'm trying to remember where I read this, but that the self-concept doesn't update to being like identifying as being a thinner person for a long time. Like, it takes time. Yeah, and it takes a lot of support to navigate that successfully. It really does. Rob says, crazy off-topic question. After I finish the boot camp, what can I do to apply for full-time work building the Bright Line Eating? I feel deeply drawn to offer hope, coaching, and my inspirational public speaking talents to clients and prospects of Bright Line Eating, and also to help Bright Line Eating achieve the wonderful goal of 1 million people in a right-sized body by 2030. I've been doing Bright Line Eating for 6 months, and I'm down 115 pounds so far, and I'm absolutely in love with the program and the renewed quality of life. Rob, I'm assuming you're a man. And if so, we need you on board because, oh my goodness, we need men championing this movement, because what we find is that men don't listen to me talking about weight loss. Not really. Or maybe they listen and then they don't sign up. So yeah. So your question is how, like, okay, what would be the best avenue? Trying to think what would be the best avenue. So get into Bright Lifers and then introduce yourself to me. Like, yeah, hop on the accountability call or, whatever. Like, there's, I'm in touch with a lot of Bright Lifers. But I'm excited. You're not the only guy who's like excited to help build the Bright Line Eating movement. There's a Bright Lifer named Patrick Dosho that's he's lost a lot of weight, and he's like, I met him in Nashville. I went down to present at Obesity Week, the academic conference down in Nashville, and a bunch of Bright Lifers got together. Patrick was there, and we had just such a good conversation. So Rob, you're not alone. I can't wait to meet you, and yeah, just get yourself on my radar after you become a Bright Lifer. Congratulations. Deborah says, my question is, do you still drink coffee or have you weaned yourself off? I'm trying to wean myself off my caffeine pills and I'm worried about the withdrawals combined with the lower amount of calories I will be consuming in the weight loss phase. Any tips or insight on weaning off caffeine would be much appreciated. Thank you. I go back and forth on coffee. I usually was off it and lately I've been on it. I've gone on and off a bunch of times over the years. My biggest advice on getting off it is the wean, like really stair step it down gradually. And with that, you should be fine. Allie says, can I do one meal a day on Bright Line Eating? I would not recommend that few meals. The reason is primarily one of metabolic health, I guess. I know I've talked to Ari Whitten about this. I would say I mean, you can, but I wouldn't. But you didn't ask me if I recommended it. You asked, can I do it? Yes, you can. There's no bright line against that. Marcia C. or Marcia C. says, I'm going on a 6-month around the world cruise. Wow. January 10th to July 11th. And although I will have access to the internet, time changes and life on the road for 180 days may make it difficult to maintain my support network, which, truth be told, has never been strong. My plan that I've discussed with my buddy is to get a face-to-face buddy in the ship spa. It's a Canyon Ranch spa, to commit my food to daily. I will have the option to select food daily from the spa menu that is vegan. They unfortunately still eat flour and sugar. LOL, not really that healthy. I recently hit 10 pounds over the top of my goal weight range due to a wonky program, so I went back onto the weight loss plan, and I'm in the 14-day challenge that ends the day I leave, and I will at that point be within 5 pounds of my goal weight range. Questions, comments on my support plan. Should I consider reboot resume now or wait until I return in mid-July 2019? Should I transition back into maintenance when I board the ship or continue on the weight loss plan until I hit goal weight and then transition back to maintenance in another week or two? Looking forward to seeing you at the family reunion. I get back on July 11th. When does the reunion start? I'm already registered. Be sure you remember to pay. I'm just checking the dates of the family reunion. It's July 14th, I think, but I just want to check for you. Yeah, July 14th through 17th. And you won't have a seat if you don't pay, I think in February. So be sure you're checking your email. I'm an 8, was in Highland House January 2017, lost 70 pounds. Okay. So I would get more support. I would load up on, there's apps that can provide support like Voxer, WhatsApp. I would get more support. Spas, I mean, cruises usually have buffets. I don't know why you're eating off a spa menu that has sugar and flour. Cruises usually have buffets where you can there's the salad bar and get your vegetables and stuff like that. So I'm a little confused about that. Don't do reboot resume now because of all the videos. It'll just suck up your bandwidth. But I would, are you in Bright Lifers? Yeah, you must be because you signed up for the reunion. So I would just stay in touch with Bright Lifers. And I'd continue on the weight loss plan until your weight's a little bit lower and then transition later. Hope that helps. Cindy says, can you repeat what you said again about what smoothies and green drinks do to the dopamine response? I'm a type 1 diabetic, and after I drink a smoothie, even if it's almost completely vegetables, I get ravenously hungry. I know it's because of a spike in my blood sugar, but I missed how that affects dopamine and leptin. It's hard to stop doing something unless I fully understand how or why it's negatively affecting me. Cindy, well, you already have enough evidence that it's negatively affecting you, but the additional things that you're missing are there is a dopamine release that's larger than normal because of that, the flood of the rush into your bloodstream that fast, which keeps your brain from healing. Only a leptin issue if you have some insulin insensitivity on board, which would result in slightly higher than average baseline insulin levels. So leptin is going to be an issue for some people, not everyone. The other issue is neurogenesis in the hippocampus. So that little network of cells in the hippocampus that generates new brain cells, it slows down when we drink our calories. Jill says, question, I like to make and check off lists like morning and evening routines. Is it better to list everything? Do we get more gratification from checking off lots of things, making my bed, feeding the cat? Or does seeing all these to-dos contribute to cognitive overload? Should I remove tasks and routines after they become automatized? I keep my checklist one sheet, and I do remove things after they're completely automated. I put the things on there that I get high value out of tracking. The most essential things I continue to track, even if they're automated. So it's up to you. If you love the long checklist and you love ticking off all the things, I don't see any huge reason not to. Why do we need to weigh veggies, says Gina. They're low-cal and life-giving. I'd like to have access to unlimited veggies. And is that possible in Bright Line Eating? Gina, there's no Bright Line Eating police, so you could do what you want to do there. The reason we weigh veggies is, first of all, if you don't, most people will not eat enough. Second is, if you're high on the susceptibility scale, you won't, my experience is you probably won't find as much freedom if you don't weigh them. Free foods and stuff, it's a very diety concept, and there's a lot of fat vegans overeating a lot of healthy foods. I could eat 10 pounds of roasted Brussels sprouts. I could eat 10 pounds of roasted carrots. I could eat 5 Honeycrisp apples. Like, you can overeat on healthy foods. So the whole, like, you know, eat as much as you want of the foods that are low calorie density and so forth, that is a notion that is true of people who are lower on the susceptibility scale. The higher you go on the susceptibility scale, the less true that becomes. So just be true to yourself, Gina. If you're really high on the susceptibility scale, you probably need to weigh your veggies. Now, you can increase the amount a little bit. Like, if you want, right now, the Bright Line Eating food plan is 6 for lunch, because you get a fruit too, and 14 for dinner, because there's no fruit there. You want to bump that up, but I would still weigh them if you're high on the susceptibility scale. Pat says, question, when do we address the isolator in Resume? In some ways, right from the beginning, Pat. The Successful Support System Bonus Experiment 1 that's already there is addressing it right from the beginning. If you're asking about the Identify Your Isolator Masterclass, I'm not sure exactly when that's going to take place. I know that Everett and I are going to be together in the retreat that he's doing in Hawaii in a couple weeks, less than a couple weeks, coming up really soon now. Yeah, just over a week. So he and I will at least make a plan for, get that on the calendar. But it's not on the calendar as of the moment. Sharon says, how do you change your identity? One day at a time, one action at a time. But you can focus with the intention of changing your identity as a clear thing and create like a mantra around it, or like just making sure that you are orienting towards something to be the kind of person who does that thing. So that's just a reframe. But ultimately, an identity is changed slowly through a series of actions over time, like bricks in the wall. All right, how are we doing here? Carol says, I'm a bright lifer, 107 days in and doing great, but concerned about my family, especially sons, suffering with anxiety and depression. They are young adults and resistant, but we do eat some meals together. Any advice greatly appreciated. I'm not sure what you're asking for, Carol. Advice around what? My main advice is to be as loving as you can while really keeping your eyes on your own plate. You want them to know that you're there for them, but what they eat and how they do or don't show up for their own lives and their own treatment and so forth is ultimately once they're adults, it's theirs to do. You know what I mean? So mothers hovering don't help. So especially if you're asking for advice about their eating, my advice is keep your eyes on your own plate, keep your eyes on your own plate, keep your eyes on your own plate. You provide the foods that you feel good about providing, but go deaf, dumb, and blind about whether they eat them or not. That's their business. They're grown men. Even if they're not grown men, it's still none of your business. They get to decide whether and how much to eat. Floyd V says, if stress causes a desire to eat, why do you ignore spiritual factors, disconnection from our personal creator, and personal peaceful relationships with other people as mechanics to physical health? Oh, good question, Floyd. I don't think I ignore those factors at all. They're super important. What I do is I incorporate them in ways that are really individualized and respectful of different people's approaches and beliefs to those matters, right? Beliefs about those matters. So I talk a lot about relationships and about approaches to soulful living and authentic living and practices that some people would call spiritual in nature and other people would call secular approaches. The reason that I do that is that I want the Bright Line Eating movement to be as open as possible to people who believe and don't believe in lots of different ways. So what I often do around that is I point out the places. So for example, research shows that prayer helps this. So if you're someone who prays, on coaching calls, I'm often asking, like, do you have a higher power? Do you have a belief? Because if you do, praying in that instance would be the thing to do. But I ask first, right? I don't assume, because telling someone who doesn't have an openness to a power greater than themselves, telling them to go pray about that is like, that's not going to be helpful. Like, it'd be helpful for you. It wouldn't be helpful for them, right? You might say, well, if they did pray, it would be helpful. And research shows actually not necessarily. So, if someone has, if the word God gives them hives, you know what I mean? Saying, the Lord's Prayer is actually not going to help that person. So, yeah. Heidi says, I didn't work out during the 14-day challenge and I really missed it for a week. Then I went back to exercising and I felt worn out. I'm 3 pounds heavier than I want to be, but I'm considered within normal weight. I want to get back on track, but I thought I needed more protein as an exerciser. The maintenance plan seems to add more carbs other than at breakfast. Have you reviewed the eating plan for people like me? We talk about this a lot in the Bright Lifers on the Move group, the relationship between Bright Line Eating and exercise and so forth. So Heidi, without talking with you in more depth, like individually, I can't tweak the Bright Line Eating food plan for you from the information you've provided. But it is true that the Bright Line Eating food plan does sometimes need to be tweaked depending on someone's exercise regimen. That is definitely true. Catherine, can intermittent fasting fit into the Bright Line Eating program? What is your opinion of intermittent fasting to reduce sugar reserves? Sue asked that second question. There's good science behind intermittent fasting, and yes, it can be incorporated into the Bright Line Eating program. I would recommend not at first, though. Get your automaticity down. And then, yeah, absolutely. I mean, really, it's just increasing your fasting window and, scrunching your either 2 meals or just 3 meals, but more compressed in terms of a time window, a feeding window. Totally doable. Dana says, I understand that Bright Line Eating deals with food addiction and obesity. In your opinion, do you think that it will also help with other types of addiction in addition to weight loss? Not necessarily, maybe. Addictions really vary. Like I said, in general, if something's a very damaging, very persistent addiction, I always recommend getting support for it from people who've had that particular addiction. I have not found that a generalized approach to treat all addictions is that helpful. Like, going to Narcotics Anonymous. Narcotics Anonymous in particular is a program that talks about one addiction, like addiction is addiction is addiction, which I think in general is kind of a true thing. Like, there's a way of looking at it where it's like, well, that's true in a certain way. But I don't find NA to be helpful at all in dealing with food addiction, because you can just stop using heroin. You can stop using crack. You have to engage with food. So they don't really know how to help someone figure out how to engage with food and get support around that. So in a similar way, like I said earlier, I wouldn't know the first thing about how to help someone with a strong gaming addiction or a strong porn addiction or whatever. Diane says, once you've done the boot camp, can you do it again and again without paying again? Diane, once you've done the boot camp, you have access to all of the materials. So you could go through it again and again yourself without paying again. If you want to be put into a new Facebook group for support, a different one, you'll stay in the one you were in. But if you want to be put into a different one and get a fresh new round of coaching calls for the duration and let the bootcamp modules be dripped out to you again and sort of go through the experience again, you need to pay again, but it's a reduced rate. I think it's $197. If you join Bright Lifers, it becomes only $97. People say eating high sugar fruits is the same as eating sugar. Is that true? No, there's good research on that. It's actually not true. It's not advisable if you're high on the susceptibility scale to eat a high sugar fruit in the absence of a meal. And it might, if you have a lot of insulin resistance on board, it might not be advisable for you to eat high sugar fruits for a while at all, like pineapple or mango or whatever. But no, research shows that it's actually really not the same. The phytonutrients, phytochemicals, and fiber lattice network make it a very different experience. Very, very, very different, research shows. There's good research on that. You can go to nutritionfacts.org, and Michael Greger has lots of videos on that and stuff. Fran says, does mashing cauliflower in a food processor create the same problem as juicing? Similar, I wouldn't do that on a regular basis. Yeah. Kathy says, I'm curious what kind of almond milk we should be using for a protein. My almond milk has no protein in it. Kathy, if you're doing half and half, like it's only half of your morning protein or whatever, I wouldn't worry about it. It's probably fine, especially if you're using nuts or seeds for the other half, something, or an egg or something kind of that packs a good punch there. But there is a form of almond milk, I believe the brand is Orgain, that they fortify with more protein if you want to try that. Dr. Michelle says, thank you for the Setting Goals workshop. I'm a very checklist-oriented person and thrive with structure. Sometimes I add things to my to-do list that I've already completed just so I can mark them off. What is the best way to shift from outcome emphasis to identity emphasis? So the devil's in the details, Michelle. So for example, one difference from outcome emphasis to identity emphasis is, let's say your goal is to you want to meditate regularly. And there's like a particular 20-minute meditation track that you want to be using. But some morning you don't have time to meditate for 20 minutes. The identity emphasis would be sit in a chair and breathe deeply for 2 minutes. I know it's a busy morning, but you have 2 minutes. Sit in a chair and breathe deeply yes, you won't be doing the track. Yes, it won't be the typical thing, but cast a vote for that identity anyway. You are a person who meditates every day. Go sit and meditate for 2 minutes. That would be one example of the difference. I just bought the bootcamp program 2 weeks ago. Is there any way I can access the Reboot Resume bonus modules also, says Nina. I bet my team will let you do that. So would you wait a little bit, Nina? Because my customer support team is so overloaded right now. So would you give them a week or two and then write into support, go to support.brightlineeating.com and ask at that point? I'm sure they'll let you have it. I train them to say yes. Lauren says, can I sign up for the Bright Line Eating Bootcamp today with a start date that's later than January 1st? Yeah, because your start date is controlled by you, Lauren. You get to, you'll see when you get into the bootcamp, there's a getting started checklist, and then you click to start your day one. So you can delay that if you want to. Gail says, I missed the past webinars. Are they available anywhere? This has been an amazing session. I really appreciate you taking the time to educate us. Gail, yes. There's a webinar that I did a couple days ago that is still being replayed, I think 5 or 6 times a day. You can sign up for the time that works for you. Here's where I know how to find it. If you go to the Facebook group, it's a Facebook group. So go into Facebook and type in Reboot Resume, REZOOM, in 2019. There's a Facebook group. In that Facebook group, which you'll have to join if you're not already in it, in that Facebook group is an announcement section. You'll find it on the left side as a, announcements. If you're on a laptop, if you're on your phone, it'll be one of the tabs toward the top. Click there, and that webinar was called The Psychology and Neuroscience of Reboot Resume. It was really good. I felt really proud of it. I felt really like it was helpful. And you can click there, and the webinar registration page is there. Deborah says Ezekiel bread is not on the plan in your book, yet people on Facebook are saying it's allowed. Allowed is a slippery term. It's not really on the food plan, but it doesn't technically have flour in it. It's triggering for some people and not for others. So what I recommend, and this is in the FAQs, is that you don't have Ezekiel bread while you're letting your brain heal. So initially in the camp or when you're starting the program, you avoid it because you won't be able to tell up front if it's triggering you. It'll just keep you from being successful and you won't know why. So don't have it at first. And then in the boot camp, I think it's like module 7, I introduced the 4 questions, and that's a process for trying something like Ezekiel bread and seeing for sure whether it works for you. Okay, so hold off. Deborah says, question, I drink a protein drink in the morning that is also a cleanse for my intestines. Have added a cup of grits and a cup of fruit. Is that acceptable, Deborah? It's not really the bright line eating way. So there are no bright line eating police, and if there's some medical reason why that's really necessary, okay. But if it's just because, that's what you've done, I would say, well, what you've done is given you what you've gotten. So if you want something different, maybe just try eating a bright line breakfast. Rissy says, darling Susan, thank you so much for spending New Year's Eve with us. What a gift. No place I'd rather be right now than hanging here with you, learning, thinking, absorbing, planning, and far away from NMF, NMD, and too much partying. May 2019 bring you and your family peace and joy. Thank you for all you give to all of us. You are brilliant, patient, empathetic, and incredibly generous with your time, knowledge, and yourself. We love, 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 love you. XO, Rissy. I think my team put that one at the end of all those questions so I could read that one last. Well done, Jen. That was sweet. We'll end there. Oh. So here's the way it works, folks. We're coming to the end of this beautiful webinar. You'll get a link to rewatch it if you want access to the information again. You can click the Secure Your Spot Now button if you want access to the bootcamp or Reboot Resume. All of the resources that I've been making available, all the Facebook Lives, all of the amazing, amazing, amazing Reboot Resume Masterclass series, that video series that I poured my heart and soul into making and had so much fun making. And the other webinar that I did a couple days ago, they're all available right now. It's all coming down January 3rd, though. January 3rd. So you've just got a couple more days to absorb it all and to choose whether you want to join us in Reboot Resume. Or if you want to do the boot camp with that special bonus package. And watch your email for links to the resources. You will get more links to the resources. Or you can go to the public Facebook group, Reboot Resume in 2019. And in the announcements section, you can find links to all of that stuff. So I love you very much. It's been very sweet. Have a safe, wonderful New Year's Eve. Happy New Year. Welcome soon here to 2019 already if you're in Australia or New Zealand. I love you super, super, super duper much. And I will see you soon. Bye, everyone.